Chapter 2105. Tokisaki Kurumi was so angry that she felt dizzy. She pointed at Dustless with a trembling finger. This bastard didn't know how many people were fawning over her every day, but this bastard showed a look of disdain. Especially when he looked like he had eaten a fly, it made Tokisaki Kurumi want to vomit blood. Remember this clearly. Goodbye. After throwing the can into the trash can, Wuxia turned around and walked away. Only Tokisaki Kurumi was left on the bench with her eyes wide open. Tokisaki Kurumi stared at Dustless's back. She couldn't help but feel a little stuffy. She subconsciously touched her face and her curvy figure and muttered to herself, "Am I so unattractive that this bastard isn't interested in me at all?" Tokisaki Kurumi looked at Dustless unwillingly. She gritted her teeth and chased after him. "Oh, I remember you asked me to be your maid last time, right?" Tokisaki Kurumi stopped in front of Dustless and bowed elegantly to Dustless. "Yes, I did." Dustless looked down at Tokisaki Kurumi, who was a head shorter than him, and laughed. "Are you going to change your mind now?" "Change my mind?" Tokisaki Kurumi laughed and didn't say anything. She treated it as a joke that went in one ear and out the other. "Why don't I tease you a little so you don't have to be so cocky?" Tokisaki Kurumi rolled her eyes and a cunning look flashed in her eyes. "You want me to be your maid? Although the request is unreasonable, it's not impossible." Tokisaki Kurumi looked at Dustless with a smile. No one knew what she was thinking. Dustless didn't move. He looked at Tokisaki Kurumi silently, as if waiting for her to say something. "Actually, the request is very simple. All you need to do is to pay a small price," Tokisaki Kurumi said with a hidden meaning. "Price?" Dustless looked at Tokisaki Kurumi with interest and didn't refuse. "Tell me about it." "As long as you," giving Dustless a playful look, Tokisaki Kurumi laughed. "As long as you wash my feet 10 times, I'll agree to your conditions." In all fairness, Tokisaki Kurumi's conditions weren't harsh. On the contrary, they were ordinary and there wasn't any unreasonable request. The reason why he asked Dustless to wash his feet was because he felt that Dustless was too arrogant and needed to be suppressed. This condition is very easy to fulfill. It's very simple and even very considerate. Anyone can easily fulfill it. Dustless spoke softly without any ripples in his tone. "Shouldn't you be happy?" Tokisaki Kurumi was speechless. This guy was as clueless as a rock. "So do you agree or not?" As soon as he finished speaking, Tokisaki Kurumi stared at Wuxia without blinking. She was quite confident in her looks. Tokisaki Kurumi's face was filled with smiles. From her point of view, Wuxia should have immediately agreed to her request. To be able to obtain such a beautiful maid, he should be so happy that he couldn't even find his bearings. "Let me think." Dustless didn't say much. He only replied with 3 words, then lowered his head to think about something. "Bastard, I gave you such a generous condition, and you still dare to think about it." Tokisaki Kurumi almost went crazy. Dustless's hesitant expression was clearly saying that she was at a disadvantage. Even if she gave him an inch, he should know when to stop. "After thinking about it for a long time, I finally understood." After a long while, Dustless finally took a deep breath. He looked at Tokisaki Kurumi seriously with a faint smile on his face. He seemed to be very satisfied with his idea. "At least you know what's good for you." Tokisaki Kurumi breathed a sigh of relief. To be honest, she didn't choose to be Dustless's maid on a whim. She had thought it through carefully. Tokisaki Kurumi's goal was to kill the first elf. However, it was too difficult for her to do it alone. After witnessing Dustless's terrifying strength, she knew that if she and Dustless worked together, the first elf would die without a doubt. Secondly, she had suffered a lot in front of Dustless. She still wanted to take revenge on Dustless, but it was impossible in terms of strength. After all, she had witnessed how terrifying and heaven-defying Dustless was. Therefore, she could only take action in other ways. Letting Dustless wash her feet was a way to make up for her broken pride. "I suddenly changed my mind. Previously, you only needed to agree to my conditions. Now the conditions have changed." Dustless suddenly said. "Changed?" Tokisaki Kurumi was stunned. "Of course it has changed. You have to wash my feet 10 times before I agree to be your maid. It's the kind of job that lasts a lifetime. I'll do anything you want me to do." As she spoke, Tokisaki Kurumi even licked her lips seductively. "You misunderstood me." Lightly glancing at Shirasaki Kurumi, Wuxia slowly said, In the past you only needed to agree to be my maid, but now what? Tokisaki Kurumi's mouth twitched a few times as she looked at Dustless's naughty smile. She felt a deep sense of unease. You have to call me daddy 100 times before I agree. Dustless rolled his eyes and said seriously. You bastard. Tokisaki Kurumi's face was filled with rage. A vintage gun appeared in her hand. Bang, bang, bang. Without even thinking, a series of dense bullets were fired out. Poochie, poochie. A few huge holes appeared in Dustless's head in the blink of an eye. Even his eyes were pierced. But in the next second they were repaired by the glint fruit. This bastard, I must kill him. I'm so angry. Tokisaki Kurumi's lungs were about to explode. Helping a beauty wash her feet 10 times could make her a maid for a lifetime. This was a free lunch that fell from the sky. But Dustless, this bastard, not only did he not agree, he even wanted her to call him daddy 100 times before agreeing to be his maid. Could he be any more despicable? P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 auto-subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2106. Don't push your luck. After wasting half a day, Tokisaki Kurumi finally managed to squeeze out such a sentence. Her watery eyes glared at Dustless. The anger in her eyes could be clearly seen, but she sounded a little timid. She couldn't win in a fight or a verbal battle, so she naturally lacked confidence. I'm pushing my luck. What can you do about it? Dustless retorted indifferently and coldly said, It's your fortune that I've taken a fancy to you. Since you don't know what's good for you, I won't play with you anymore. Goodbye. As his voice faded, Dustless leisurely turned around and left. Despicable guy. I won't let you off so easily. Focusing on Dustless's back, Tokisaki Kurumi stomped her feet in anger and pouted her lips. She was fuming with anger because of Dustless. Her thoughts and memories flowed back like the tide. Thinking back, Tokisaki Kurumi realized that she had never suffered such a huge loss since her debut. Only when she met Dustless did she feel as if she had swallowed a fly. What an overconfident little girl. She actually dared to ask me to wash her feet. He's quite ambitious. Along the way, Dustless seemed to be taking a leisurely stroll as he walked very slowly. Since Itsuka's house had been destroyed, he would definitely have no place to stay when he returned. Boom, boom, boom. A deafening explosion tore through the sky as a violent shockwave blew towards him. Dustless's hair was blown to one side. The relatively cool atmosphere suddenly became a lot hotter. This is... Dustless squinted his eyes and carefully sensed it. This scorching energy seems to belong to Itsuka Kotori. Who's fighting with her again? Dustless was dumbfounded. He was really puzzled. He was sure that this was Itsuka Kotori's energy. He had just fought with her, so he was quite familiar with this energy fluctuation. Interesting. How long has it been? She just fought with me and now she's changed opponents. This arrogant girl really can't be looked at with ordinary eyes. Out of curiosity, Dustless sped towards the center. Boom boom boom. The closer they got, the clearer the ear-piercing rumbling sounds became. Looking up, they saw two figures fighting in the sky, engaging in a life-and-death battle. Balrog, I must kill you today and avenge my parents. The silver-haired girl glared at Itsuka Kotori. When she mentioned her parents, her eyes were filled with coldness. Swish, swish, swish. The equipment that the white-haired girl was wearing provided her with great power. She quickly flew towards Itsuka Kotori with the laser sword in her hand raised high. That's ridiculous. Itsuka Kotori furrowed her brows and flew out without showing any signs of weakness. If we continue fighting like this, it's only a matter of time before something happens. Murasame Rain was secretly anxious. Looking at the two people who were fighting fiercely, she sincerely felt that something was wrong. I sensed that one of them was Itsuka Kotori. I thought it was another elf, but it turned out to be this little girl. Dustless walked slowly, looking at the two women fighting in the sky, and smiled. It turned out to be Tabichi Origami. The person who was shouting for revenge was one of the members of AST, Tabichi Origami. It was estimated that the previous fight between Dustless and Itsuka Kotori attracted her. After all, was too noisy. Seeing Dustless coming, Murasame Rain's eyes lit up and said anxiously, The task of ending this battle is handed to you. If it continues, the commander may completely go berserk. It's none of my business. Dustless responded very rudely and said coldly, "What, you treat me as a full-time babysitter? Where the fire is, I will go there to put out the fire. There is a reward." Cursing Dustless thousands of times in her heart, Murasame Rain could only take a step back helplessly. "Not interested, I'm not a greedy person and you don't have anything worthy of me." Without looking at Murasame Rain, Dustless answered calmly. Murasame Rain felt a headache and could only say in a pleading tone, "Every time the commander transforms into an elf, she can't completely control this power and lose her mind. You don't want her to become a killing machine. Of course you can ignore the life and death of others, but you don't want the commander to destroy this city, know your planet, right?" Dustless was slightly stunned, silently stared at Murasame Rain for a long time and rarely praised. "This reason is very good and it really moved me. Doing things on my territory without my permission is ignoring my authority. This man's temper is really weird." Murasame Rain didn't know whether to laugh or cry. For Dustless, this kind of strange and unpredictable person, he didn't play according to common sense every time. But fortunately, since Dustless agreed to make a move, it indicated that this battle had already ended here. "Go to hell." Itsuka Kodori gradually became angry and suddenly waved the huge axe. Boom. It seemed to be a casual blow, but compared with before, the power was several times stronger, and Tabichi Origami was blown away without any effort. The power is so strong. Tabichi Origami kept retreating, her face changed greatly, and she barely stabilized her body after retreating for more than 10 meters. She held the laser sword with trembling hands and her arms couldn't help shaking. This casual blow almost broke the will of Tabichi Origami. If it was other AST members, they may have been directly shocked to death by the powerful force. The game ends here. Itsuka Kodori's eyes were full of raging killing intent, filled with the breath of death. Even if it was a hot summer, being stared at by the horrible red eyes, Tabichi Origami was numb and her back was cold. Boom. The shape of the giant axe held by Itsuka Kodori suddenly changed, and the huge axe on both sides shrank and became a strange shape similar to an iron pillar. With the increase of the spiritual power output of Itsuka Kodori, the iron pillar glowed with dangerous dark red light, surrounded by high-density golden flames and burned red. "Go to hell." Pointing the weapon coldly at the dazed Tabichi Origami, the thick flame erupted in a beam. The speed was extremely fast, there was no time to dodge and Tabichi Origami was about to be melted. PS. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 evaluation votes plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2107. Go to hell. He pointed his weapon at the dazed Toichi Origami, and a thick flame erupted in the form of a light beam. It was so fast that Toichi Origami didn't even have time to dodge. "Am I going to die here? I can't accept this. I didn't even get to avenge my parents." Origami Kitsune bitterly smiled, looking very bleak. Looking at the huge ray of light coming towards her, her delicate little face was covered with a layer of beautiful despair. She couldn't avenge her parents, but she was still killed by the enemy. In desperation, Kitaichi Origami calmly closed her eyes and waited for her death. Buzz. It was also at this moment that an inexplicable throbbing came from the horizon. The void in front of Kitaichi Origami suddenly rippled like the surface of the water. "What's going on?" Itsuka Kodori opened her eyes wide and her red eyes were full of shock. At this moment she, who was in her elf form, seemed to have returned to consciousness. Kakaka. Accompanied by a violent sound, a huge black hole appeared in the space in front of Koichi Origami. "What is this? A hole?" Tokichi Origami, who had her eyes closed, suddenly opened her eyes and stared at the black hole in front of her. Her small face was filled with shock. "Is this to save me? Could it be Sherdao?" Thinking of this, Toichi Origami's heart was full of sweetness. The only person in this world who really cares about her is Shido. "This is not a hole, it's my ninjutsu. And I'm not Shido, I'm sorry if I disappoint you." An extremely discordant voice came. Yuani Origami suddenly stopped and looked towards the source of the voice. Dustless stepped on the air and came over with a calm face. "Shido is not here, the person you hate the most, I'm here." Dustless pointed to his nose and introduced with a smile. At the same time, the black hole that had exploded was like an endless black hole. It swallowed the incoming light beam in an instant. It was no different from a stone falling into the sea. There was no further movement. That's it? Seeing this, Itsuka Kotori stared at Dustless angrily and said, "Don't be nosy, this is between me and her." "I don't want to be nosy." Dustless looked at Itsuka Kotori and said slowly, "But I said before, this planet is my territory, did I allow you to fight?" "You." These words not only angered Itsuka Kotori, but Toichi Origami also frowned. "This is too arrogant." However, recalling that it was Wuxia who saved her, Yuni took back the words that were about to come out of her mouth. "You what? If you don't agree or want to change my rules, then come at me." Looking at Itsuka Kotori's face, Wuchen's tone was filled with disdain. "Itsuka Kotori is too weak." Boom boom boom. Itsuka Kotori was clearly angered by Dustless's words. The golden flames around her lit up again, and they were even stronger than before. It was as if they were going to burn through the sky. Her body kept spitting out flames and she was surrounded by a golden fireball. Gulp. Even Kitsune Origami felt a chill run down her spine, and her eyes were filled with fear. Humph. Seeing this, Dustless snorted coldly, his black pupils were swallowed by the red Sharingan, and the three Tomo eyes slowly rotated. "Sleep for a while." Dustless glanced at Itsuka Kotori's body, then he didn't look at her anymore. "Don't look down on people, losing once doesn't mean you will lose twice." Seeing that Dustless ignored her, Itsuka Kotori snorted and rushed toward him. "Be careful, she's coming." It was rare for Origami Kitsune to remind Dustless. Her eyes were full of fear. After this battle, she had already understood the huge gap between ordinary humans and elves. Plop. However, before Itsuka Kotori could fly for long, her eyes suddenly rolled back, and she fell to the ground under the gaze of Toichi Origami. "What did you do to me?" Itsuka Kotori looked at Dustless with difficulty and she tried to stand up again, but to her surprise, the energy in her body was drained by some mysterious force, and she could only glare at Dustless. "Despicable, fight me if you have the guts." Itsuka Kotori was so angry that she gritted her teeth, and she cursed Dustless for using such a despicable method to win. "That's it." Toichi Origami's mouth twitched. Such a powerful elf was knocked out by Dustless with a single glance, and he didn't even do anything. This was too ridiculous. She was like an extra in a movie, and as long as the plot was right she could be killed at any time. "You want to fight me with just you?" Dustless looked at Itsuka Kotori with pity and sighed. "You can't even block my illusion, and it's the simplest kind, and you want to fight me? Kotori, there's a limit to your overestimation or you will become a laughingstock." Elves were powerful, but they weren't a threat to Dustless at all. They were in two completely different realms. No matter how strong a child was, they could only be beaten up by airplanes and cannons. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 tips plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 auto-subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2108. So powerful he killed the elf in an instant. Tabichi Origami's eyes were as bright as the stars. Even though she was a simple-minded person, she was looking at Dustless with admiration. He had only taken a casual glance at the fairy, and Itsuka Kotori found it extremely difficult to even stand up. Who else could do such a thing? "Balrog, today is the day you die." Calming herself down, Tabichi Origami glared at Itsuka Kotori with hatred. She held a laser sword in her hand and walked over with a cold expression. The killing intent on her face was no joke. After all, because of Itsuka Kotori, her parents were burned to death. Their faces were unrecognizable and not even their corpses were left behind. It was understandable that Tabichi Origami hated Itsuka Kotori. No one would be able to tolerate such a thing. In fact, if Dustless encountered the same fate as Origami Kite, he would have already chopped his enemies into pieces and ground their bones into ashes. "I killed your parents?" Hearing this, Itsuka Kotori also stared blankly at Tabichi Origami, who was glaring at her with hatred. Clearly she wasn't faking it. Even though Itsuka Kotori's memories of the past were blurry, she knew that she had done something terrible 5 years ago. She just couldn't recall it. Die. Swish. Swish. Recalling the tragic state of her parents, she swung the blade mercilessly at Kotori's head. Her head was about to be sliced open. 10,000 mammoth heavenly attraction. At this critical moment, there was a sudden suction force from behind. The majestic force forcefully pulled Toichi Origami away, and even his blade was sucked over. Plop. Being caught off guard, Yuichi Origami fell into Dustless's arms. Her body suddenly trembled and a strange electric current flashed through her body. Her body suddenly became soft and she didn't even have the strength to take revenge. Yuichi Origami, who had never had intimate contact with the opposite sex, suddenly blushed. She was quite cute and the speed of her breathing became several times faster. It smells so good. I remember his name is Dustless. Is he really a man? Looking up at Dustless, Yuini Origami was also stunned for a while. It was the first time she met a man with such a fragrance. Brat, have you seen enough? Dustless glanced at her coldly. His simple words made Origami Kitsune shiver. Her small face was extremely embarrassed and she quickly began to struggle. Why don't you let me go? Slow idiot, said Zhou Xian. Dustless just snorted in disdain. I didn't hug you at all. You threw yourself into my arms. You. Hearing this, Yuichi Origami's little face became even more embarrassed. She glanced at Dustless in annoyance and then flew backward, withdrawing from Dustless's arms as fast as she could. Why did you stop me from taking revenge? Yuichi Origami Kitsune looked at Dustless with anger brewing in her eyes. She pointed at Itsuka Kotori and shouted angrily. She killed my parents. Dustless didn't say anything. In fact, he didn't refute. The death of parents was a blood feud and no one could tolerate such a thing. But the premise was that Yuichi Origami's parents must be Itsuka Kotori. But the truth was not so. As a transmigrator, Dustless knew the truth of the past. Your parents. Carefully looking at Yuichi Origami Kitsune's face, Dustless remembered the truth of the past. He shook his head and said slowly. Kotori didn't kill them. I still remember the scene of the past. It's useless even if you want to clear her name now. Yuichi Origami Kitsune moved her lips and looked at Dustless expressionlessly. Seeing this, Dustless frowned slightly. Actually, the real murderer is. Just as he was about to say the real murderer, Dustless suddenly closed his mouth and told the truth. The blow to Yuichi Origami Kitsune was too cruel. She probably couldn't accept such a cruel blow. In fact, the real murderer of Yuichi Origami Kitsune's parents wasn't Itsuka Kotori, but Yuichi Origami Kitsune herself. But this kind of thing couldn't be explained clearly. It was too shocking for Yuichi Origami Kitsune, and she might even have a mental breakdown. Besides, Dustless didn't have any evidence that could convince Yuichi Origami Kitsune. It doesn't matter if you believe it or not. This is the undeniable truth and I have no reason to lie to you. Dustless said calmly. Then he changed the topic and said with a smile. Besides, who told you that your parents are dead? You're going off topic. It's no different from talking nonsense. Yuichi Origami Kitsune glared at Dustless. Her good impression of him disappeared instantly. This guy is getting better at talking nonsense. How could she remember this kind of thing wrongly? The scene of her parents being burned to death was still vivid in her mind. This unlucky child. Dustless couldn't help but sigh. Finally, he bowed his head and thought for a while. In short, you should go back. Your parents will go back safe and sound tonight. But, speaking of this, Dustless's tone became a lot lower. He said in a deep voice, although your parents didn't die, they were attacked and some of their memories faded a lot. Dustless decided to use Ghetto, reincarnation heavenly jutsu to resurrect Yuichi Origami Kitsune's parents. Anyway, they wouldn't be affected. Dustless's data was better than Uzumaki Nagato's. Take Obito Uchiha for example. She didn't die even after using Ghetto, reincarnation heavenly jutsu, let alone Dustless. After that, he would use dojitsu to erase the memories of Origami Kitsune's parents. As a result, this matter will inevitably come to an end. It may not be satisfactory, but it is the best ending. Are you serious? Yuichi Origami looked suspiciously at Dustless. He didn't look like he was lying at all. Of course, Dustless nodded and smiled mysteriously. When the time comes, don't be scared. In fact, they have been secretly living in this world, silently observing you. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus more, 3,000 rewards plus more, 1,000 comments plus more, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more. Chapter 2109. Are you kidding me? Toichi Origami glared at Wuxia. This fellow was full of nonsense. Her parents had been burned alive by Itsuka Kotori many years ago. How could they be resurrected? You don't have to lie to save me. Even though I've temporarily lost my memories, I do remember clearly that I've done something wrong in the past. Itsuka Kotori said in a daze. That's the truth. Wuxian looked at Tashichi Origami and said, I won't accuse people and I won't lie to a kid. Listen to me, go back now, your parents will come home tonight. Do you think you are a god? You can bring people back from the dead? Tabichi Origami was still skeptical. Dustless could reverse time and bring people back from the dead, but that was something only a god could do. Hehe. Dustless laughed twice and joked, in my long life I have done too many professions. I have been a ninja, a pirate, a celestial dragon and a shinigami. In short, I have many professions. If you want me to become a god, I don't mind playing this new profession. You are crazy. Tabichi Origami frowned and looked at Dustless. She saw that he was smiling and was very confident. She thought to herself, with Dustless here I can't kill the Balrog. Tabichi Origami could see that Dustless and Itsuka Kotori's relationship wasn't simple. It was impossible for him to watch her kill people without doing anything. Okay, I will believe you this time. Taking a deep breath, Tabichi Origami stared at Itsuka Kotori. Even if she was dissatisfied, she held it in and said, Dustless, I can give you one night. But if you can't bring my parents home, I will still kill this woman. If you can't complete the task, you will have to give me her life. You still want to bargain with me? Dustless touched his chin and looked at the stubborn Tabichi Origami with interest. He waved his hand and said, Fine, 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 I will agree to your conditions. However, Itsuka Kotori's life is her own. I have no right to decide. Then isn't this a loss for me? This kind of agreement has no advantages or benefits for me. Yuichi Origami coldly snorted. Wasn't this just trying to gain something without risking anything? You little girl. Wuxian sighed. Sure enough, the ignorant were fearless. After living for a few hundred years, he had encountered various kinds of ambitious and ruthless people. Who dared to bargain with him? How about this, if I can't complete the task, I will give you my life. Looking at Yuichi Origami seriously, Wuxian smiled and said seriously. His tone was magnanimous and natural, as if he was talking about something trivial. Are you crazy? Itsuka Kotori and Tabichi Origami exclaimed at the same time. Both of them widened their eyes and looked at Dustless in disbelief. This guy was gambling with his life. Especially Yuan-e Origami, it seemed especially absurd. Her parents were clearly dead and she had seen it with her own eyes. Yet Wuxian still insisted that Yuan-e Origami's parents should go home tonight. If they didn't come back, they would rather be killed. Wasn't this retarded? Dustless. Compared to Tabichi Origami, Itsuka Kotori was extremely touched. Tears began to well up in her eyes, and her pink eyes were also dotted with tears. For her, Dustless was willing to give up his life and Tabichi Origami's life, which really touched Itsuka Kotori. This guy. On the other side, Murasame Rain, who was usually in a trance and looked very weak, looked at Dustless in a daze, and the sound of excitement could be heard through the mini headphones in her ears. Commander's favorability to Dustless reached 100% in an instant. It was only about 20% to 30% before, but this time it soared to 100%. It's a miracle. Hearing the report in the headphones, Murasame Rain was quite calm. If it was her favorability to Dustless would also rise to this level. This was completely a date with his life, not an act. Itsuka Kotori was touched by Dustless, and it was normal for her favorability to reach 100%. Not everyone had the courage to gamble with their own life for the lives of others. I hope you don't regret it. Tabichi Origami took a deep look at Dustless, and after a few seconds of silence she looked at Itsuka Kotori and turned away. Her eyes were quite complicated, there was hatred, jealousy and envy. Are you serious? Seeing Tabichi Origami left, Itsuka Kotori stood up and walked to Dustless and hurriedly asked, I didn't ask you to gamble with your own life, and this bet is really... Itsuka Kotori opened her mouth but found it hard to speak. This matter had nothing to do with Wuxian, but he was willing to bet his own life. If he lost, he would definitely die. Itsuka Kotori was extremely touched by Wuxian's actions, no matter if he was hot-headed or thinking twice before acting. Of course I'm serious. Dustless stretched his body lazily, yawned lazily and smiled. I may die in the future, but at least at this moment I haven't lived enough and I don't plan to die for the time being. You can really let Tabichi Origami's parents go home at night? Itsuka Kodori bit her lower lip and looked at Dustless nervously. If they couldn't go back, Dustless would lose his life. Didn't I tell you? I won't gamble with my life and I don't want to die for the time being. Since I promised I can do it. Staring into Itsuka Kodori's eyes, Wuchen's eyes shone like the moon in the sky. Kodori fell into a daze. I'll leave for a while. Dustless turned around and left. It seemed like he was going to revive Tabichi Origami's parents. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 21:10. Looking at Dustless's back, both Rain Murasame and Kodori had a complicated feeling, and they both stared at Dustless in a daze. As for Itsuka Kodori, her heart was filled with warmth and gratitude. She was surprised that Wuchen was willing to gamble with his life. She was even caught off guard, and her favorability towards Wuchen rose to a shocking 100%. As for Murasame Rain, she was full of admiration. Being able to make Itsuka Kodori's favorability rise to 100% in an instant, Murasame Rain really admired Dustless. Commander, what's our next plan? After stabilizing her emotions, Rain Murasame looked at Kodori. The next plan. Kodori pondered for a while. Itsuka Kodori thought for a moment. She had regained her rationality after Wu Chen's antics. She said wisely, protect Wu Chen for now. Don't let him get hurt. Although Shido was injured before, Kodori wasn't worried. It wasn't that Kodori underestimated Shido's life, but because Shido sealed Kodori's ability a long time ago, so he got Kodori's recovery ability as an elf, so he wouldn't be in any danger. On the other hand, Kodori was afraid that Dustless wouldn't be able to complete the mission. If he took the initiative to die, everything would be over. This kind of primitive exchange wasn't worth it. After all, this matter had nothing to do with Dustless. Time flew by and it was evening in the blink of an eye. At this moment, in Tabichi Origami's home, the silver-haired girl was sitting on the sofa, looking at the TV with dull eyes. She was like a lifeless statue. How dare he gamble? Is he not afraid of death? Tabichi Origami repeated this sentence for almost the entire afternoon. She couldn't figure out where Dustless got his confidence from, and he even dared to gamble with his life. After all, the scene of her parents being burned alive was still vivid in her mind. Even now when she recalled it, her chest would hurt. However, Dustless said that her parents were still alive and would let them go home at night. This was complete nonsense. Let's see what kind of ridiculous excuse this guy will use to get away with it. Yuichi Origami turned off the TV. When she was about to take a shower, the sound of knocking on the door suddenly attracted her. Dustless? Tokichi Origami frowned and then went to open the door in slippers. Creak. As expected, what entered his eyes was indeed Wuchen, who was grinning from ear to ear. Where's he? Where are my parents? Yuichi Origami poked her head out and looked around. She found that there was no one around. Not to mention her parents, there was not even a stray cat. Not yet. Shrugging, Dustless calmly stepped into Tokichi Origami's house. He casually looked around, not minding that this was a girl's house at all. You're really not polite at all. Turning her head and glancing at Dustless, who was wandering around, Tokichi Origami's mouth twitched twice. After immediately closing the door, she asked very impolitely, "Where are my parents? You said you would bring them over tonight. Haven't you noticed yet? They are already here." Dustless suddenly smiled mysteriously. They're here? Tokichi Origami looked at Dustless suspiciously, and immediately looked around with expectation. There was no one in the big room, it was as quiet as a dead hell. Are you playing with me? Tokichi Origami asked angrily. However, in the next second a sudden change occurred. Tokichi Origami, who originally planned to find Dustless to settle the score, suddenly looked at the miraculous scene in front of her. Impossible, how can you do this kind of thing? Tokichi Origami asked in disbelief. Even because of excessive shock, her voice was a bit sharp. A ripple appeared in the space and two holes appeared. Then two young bodies slowly floated out of them. Father and mother. Wiping her eyes, Tokichi Origami suddenly saw her parents, whom she had not seen for many years. Her nose was sour and she almost couldn't help but cry. Looking at the two intact people, Tokichi Origami stared at the mysterious monster in front of her in horror. A few years ago, Tokichi Origami's parents were burned alive by flames. Their bodies were not even left behind. When they were found, they had already become unrecognizable black charcoal. Dustless now used a heaven-defying method to restore the two of them. Their appearance was clearly distinguishable. Touching their bodies, there was still a cold temperature and delicate skin unique to humans. Tokichi Origami thought that they were plastic people. What method did you use to restore my parents' bodies? Tokichi Origami asked curiously. In fact, the moment she saw the two bodies, her heart was already full of gratitude to Dustless. Her parents, who were burned to black charcoal, were perfectly restored by Dustless as if they were asleep. In fact, at this moment, Tokichi Origami's dislike of Dustless in the past disappeared. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 21:11. Staring at the shocked girl, Dustless's reaction was flat, and he explained as if talking to himself. It's very simple as Jubi, my vitality is extremely huge. I just used my cells as the basis to reconstruct your parents' bodies. That's all, it's very simple. Very simple. Tabichi Origami stared at Dustless in a daze for a long time, then she asked in a shocked voice. Are you an alien? Can this kind of thing be done by humans? Tabichi Origami was speechless and she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Especially when she looked at Dustless's relaxed face, she was even more shocked and numb. Such a heaven-defying method was like a magic trick or a game for Dustless. Didn't I say before, I occasionally play the role of a god? It's normal to be able to do this kind of thing. Dustless shrugged his shoulders and immediately glanced at Tabichi Origami and waved his hand. I'm going to resurrect them now, please stay away. Dustless has already done something to the bodies. Even if they are resurrected now, Origami's parents won't remember the memory of being killed by Tabichi Origami. Gulp. When she heard Dustless say the word resurrect, Tabichi Origami's heart was in her throat, and she couldn't help but sob up and down. She looked at Dustless in horror and asked excitedly, "Can you really do that kind of thing?" "Of course I can do it, I often use that technique, it's just a small matter." Dustless nodded affirmatively and immediately smiled. "What's more, if I can't do it, I will have to pay with my life. I told you before, I haven't lived enough, it's too early to die now." Tabichi Origami didn't comment and immediately took 2 steps back. Dustless didn't waste time seeing this, his right eye instantly turned into reincarnation Sharingan, and he made a hand sign and shouted. Outer path, reincarnation. Kakaka. The void suddenly exploded, and then a large mass of green light pierced through the dark crack and landed on Tokichi Origami's parents. The green light was like specks of starlight but also like liquid water. The moment it entered the 2 corpses, some redness appeared on their originally pale faces, and their fingers also began to move gently. "Thank you, Dustless." Where are you?" Yuani Origami, who was about to thank Dustless, helplessly found that Dustless had disappeared from her sight. "We finally dealt with this big problem." Under the dim illumination of the street lamps, Dustless strolled alone on the path at night. He stretched his waist lazily with a tired look on his face. Although performing Samsara of Heaven didn't affect him much, Dustless felt a little tired. It seems that you're very tired." A soft voice suddenly entered Dustless's ears and his body suddenly froze. He subconsciously looked over and a cute and delicate girl appeared in front of him. "Tokisaki Kurumi? Why are you here again?" Dustless frowned and said coldly. This is the 3rd time Tokisaki Kurumi came to find him. "I came to find you with good intentions, but you showed a disgusted and disappointed expression. Do you dislike me that much?" Tokisaki Kurumi looked at Dustless with resentment, and there was a trace of jealousy in her words. "You weren't like this when you were with Tokichi Origami. Is the gap between us that big? You went to see Origami?" Dustless narrowed his eyes and a murderous intent flashed in his eyes. "This Tokisaki Kurumi is a famous homicidal maniac." "Yes, not only did I see her but I also witnessed the process of you reviving her parents. Really, I thought you were just bluffing but I didn't expect you to be able to do such a thing." Tokisaki Kurumi looked at Dustless with admiration. Her expression was exaggerated as if she had discovered a new continent, and her words were full of admiration. Reviving people from the dead, not even humans or elves had such a powerful ability. Cut the crap, tell me your purpose. Dustless waved his hand and looked at Tokisaki Kurumi with an impatient expression. When this person came to find him, it was always an impending disaster and nothing good ever came out of it. Dustless even labeled Tokisaki Kurumi as a jinx in his heart. I heard that your ability is the same as Itsuka Shido. How about this, let's combine? After a moment of silence, Tokisaki Kurumi became more and more satisfied, and finally gave an answer that made Dustless furious. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 21:12. Do you think we can combine just because you say so? Who do you think you are? You want to combine with me? Dustless's eyes flickered as the corner of his mouth curled up. He seemed to be tempted by Tokisaki Kurumi's suggestion. There's a chance. Seeing Dustless's interest, Tokisaki Kurumi licked her lips and exhaled deeply. Her eyes lit up as she stared at Dustless. Ever since she witnessed Dustless's strength, Tokisaki Kurumi's desire to possess Dustless grew. At the same time, she also knew that Dustless had the same ability as Itsuka Shido. Since she already had Dustless, what was the use of Itsuka Shido? Maybe if she could combine with someone as strong as Dustless, her strength would increase even more. No matter how she looked at it, it was more worth it than Itsuka Shido. Enlighten me? If I had known earlier, I would have killed Itsuka Shido. Recalling Itsuka Shido's arrogant words, Tokisaki Kurumi's lips curled into a mocking smile. Itsuka Shido said he would save her. He really didn't know how to write the word, death. Looking at Dustless, Tokisaki Kurumi's mind became active. She suggested with a bewitching tone. There are many benefits if we combine. Why don't we combine with others? At least we can gain strength. Gain my ass. Dustless looked at Tokisaki Kurumi coldly. Ignoring her dazed expression, he circled around her. Are you crazy? Do you have any value in combining with me? After Tokisaki Kurumi's face turned green, Wuxia said lazily, in this world there are as many people who want to sleep with me as there are sand in the Ganges. You're one of them. Who wants to sleep with you? Stop flattering yourself. We're just taking what we want. Tokisaki Kurumi was so infuriated by Dustless that she wanted to cry, but no tears came out. She looked at Dustless in a frenzy. The fusion she mentioned was not what Dustless understood. What I'm saying is. Just as Tokisaki Kurumi was about to explain herself, Dustless rudely interrupted her. Isn't that what you mean? That's great. It means that you can still be saved. You know what it means to love yourself and know your own worth. You don't deserve me. I originally thought that rotten wood couldn't be carved, but it seems that I was wrong. I didn't expect that even rotten wood could shine one day. It's a miracle. Dustless sighed to himself. You bastard. Dare. That. Again. Tokisaki Kurumi looked at Dustless and gritted her teeth. Her lungs were about to explode from anger. How could there be such a shameless person in this world? When Tokisaki Kurumi realized that she had bumped into Dustless, she was so angry that she wanted to tear this guy apart. It was fine if he was narcissistic, but the most shameless thing was that he kept comparing Tokisaki Kurumi to himself. How shameless. Go to hell. In her anger, Tokisaki Kurumi activated her ability and aimed her black gun at Dustless. You want to start a fight because of a disagreement? Dustless casually glanced at Tokisaki Kurumi and said lazily, Miss Tokisaki, although I don't like to beat up women, there's a bottom line to everything. Tokisaki Kurumi felt as if she had been electrocuted. She subconsciously lowered her weapon as she recalled the times when Dustless suppressed her. She subconsciously lowered her weapon. Come find me when you've thought it through. Dustless didn't even look at Tokisaki Kurumi and left resolutely. Even though Itsuka Kodori's house was razed to the ground due to the fierce battle, a brand new house was built in no time. It was even bigger than the previous one. After returning home, Wuxia hurriedly washed his face and rinsed his mouth. Then he went upstairs to sleep. You're such a lazy fella. You'll get indigestion if you sleep right after eating. Itsuka Kodori glanced at Wuxia with her watery eyes and muttered coldly. Perhaps she didn't realize that there was a gentleness in her eyes when she looked at Dustless. Previously, Tokichi Origami came to visit and thanked Dustless for saving her parents. This resolved the grudge between Itsuka Kodori and Tokichi Origami. As a result, Coteries' impression of Dustless had reached 100%. I've always been a lazy person. Training doesn't suit me. Wuxian just shrugged his shoulders, revealing a hopeless expression. Any kind of training was superfluous to him. Time flew by and it was already late at night. Ugh. At night, Wuxian turned over her body. She was lying in the warm bedding. She turned over and closed her eyes. She said in a vague voice, "Really, why did the bed suddenly become smaller?" Perhaps it was an illusion, but Dustless suddenly found the bed, which used to be spacious, to be a little cramped. "Why is your reaction so slow?" In the darkness, a blurry figure crawled on Dustless's bed. Seeing his sleepy handsome face, she grumbled unhappily, "Isn't this guy's senses very sharp? How can he not notice me? Or is it because I don't exist?" The young girl stared at Wu Chen's thin lips. Her face was flushed red and was very cute, like a ripe apple. "You're lucky." After hesitating for a while, the girl finally lowered her head and gently kissed Wu Chen's lips with a red and cute face. "It's warm and cold." Wu Chen murmured unconsciously when he was suddenly attacked. Naturally, he noticed it at the first moment. His closed eyes suddenly opened. "Little girl, it's fine if you don't sleep in the middle of the night, but how dare you sneak attack me? P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 tips plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates." Chapter 21:13. Even with the cover of the night, the girl's perfect appearance couldn't be concealed. Her fair skin gave off a wild beauty in the dark. Perhaps due to the sudden awakening of Dustless, the girl's eyes were empty and gloomy. She stared at Dustless with a blank expression. Her mind was in a mess and she was stunned on the spot. "Coterie." Dustless blurted out. It would have been better if he didn't say it, but as soon as he said it, Coterie's face turned red. Cough cough cough. Coterie coughed twice. She was only wearing simple white pajamas and her fair legs were exposed to the air. Even though it was dark, Dustless could still see them clearly. "She's young, but her body is quite good. If I remember correctly, Coterie is only 12 years old." Dustless muttered to himself. At the same time, he looked at the girl's embarrassed expression and guessed what was going on. "She wants to borrow my power to seal herself." Dustless knew Coterie's personality well. He was definitely the arrogant type. She didn't think he was charming enough to make her fall in love with him at all costs. Let's make the act real. Looking at the girl's clear eyes, they were as bright as the moon, pure and sincere. People say that the eyes are the window to the soul, and this window in front of him made him unable to reject it. Although Shido also had the ability to seal elves, Dustless guessed that the reason why he didn't choose that weak kid was because Shido was attacked by Tokisaki Kurumi and was traumatized. He had developed a serious phobia toward elves and knew that his sister was an elf. It was inevitable that there would be a rift in their sibling relationship. "If I want to seal a fairy's power, I need her to be shy." Looking at the girl's blushing face, Dustless's indifferent eyes showed a rare trace of gentleness, but it quickly disappeared. He smiled confidently in his heart. "It's just making a girl shy. It's too easy." "Hee hee, you have a reason? I don't believe you. You're just trying to take advantage of me. I want to get my money back." A wicked smile appeared on Dustless's cold face. His eyes were as sharp as an eagle's as he scanned Coterie's body. He seemed to be thinking about where to start. "You better not mess around. I didn't take advantage of you." Itsuka Coterie quickly moved away from Wu Chen's body. She felt uncomfortable being stared at by Wu Chen's invasive gaze. It was as if she was naked. Her entire body was exposed to his gaze. Although she had ambushed Dustless just now, the sad thing was that she didn't feel shy at all. She could still feel the power of the elves in her body. She could only maintain this state for 2 days. After 2 days, Itsuka Coterie might forget about the present and turn back into the violent fire spirit. "You want to borrow my power to seal myself?" Dustless looked at Itsuka Coterie with a wicked smile and said, "If that's the case, I can let bygones be bygones." Itsuka Coterie was overjoyed. Although she could see that Dustless's smile was very cunning, she still nodded. "I'm very sorry. Maybe it's a bit abrupt, but I really just want to seal my power." Hee hee. Dustless just smiled and asked lazily, "So, did you seal your power?" Itsuka Coterie's eyes were dim and she looked very disappointed. "Since you kissed me without sealing your power, it means that you took advantage of me." Wuxian looked at Itsuka Kotori shamelessly and said, "If that's the case, I'm going to get it back." Bensho Tensei. Dustless used his Rinnegan ability, and under the inertia of gravity, although Itsuka Kotori struggled, she was still taken into Dustless's arms. Puff. Being taken into Dustless's arms, Itsuka Kotori felt like she was electrocuted, and her strength was inexplicably sucked away. She looked up at Dustless's playful eyes and her body trembled slightly. "Smells so good." The elegant fragrance suddenly rushed into her nose, and Itsuka Kotori's beautiful eyes were suddenly in a trance. It was hard to imagine that a man who looked like a sloppy man could have such a nice smell, and it was intoxicating. "You're really greedy. You took advantage of me again." Seeing the intoxicated Itsuka Kotori, Dustless showed his white teeth, and with a teasing look on his face, he suddenly raised his hand to slap her. I didn't." Dustless's words were like a basin of cold water, and Itsuka Kotori instantly woke up. Looking at the raised hand, a bad premonition flashed in her heart. "You're too young to learn good things, you must be punished." Dustless suddenly turned Itsuka Kotori's body around, and very skillfully pulled down her white skin a little bit, and her white skin was like a flawless jade. Pop. Dustless decisively slapped Itsuka Kotori, and instantly there was a dark red palm print. Itsuka Kotori was like a frightened white rabbit, her heartbeat accelerated and she let out a frightened scream, but it sounded soft and powerless, and it was like a disguised request. "Damn it." Itsuka Kotori's whole face was red and she was sweating and her small hands were clenched tightly. She didn't expect that she would be so weak. "Pop. How dare you attack me? Pop. How dare you take advantage of me again?" In the next few minutes, Dustless mercilessly slapped Itsuka Kotori a few more times. Itsuka Kotori's face was as red as hot iron, and her watery eyes were covered with a layer of mist. She turned her head to look at the red area where Dustless slapped, and wanted to find a hole to hide in. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 reviews plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 21:14. It's about time. Looking at the girl's red cheeks, Wuxian smiled faintly. He knew that the time had come. He stared at Itsuka Kotori who was blushing. Wuxian also stopped hitting her. Even though it was only a few minutes, Itsuka Kotori lowered her head, afraid to look at Dustless. He must be shy. If it was a normal person who dared to hit her like this, with Itsuka Kotori's personality, she would have turned into an angel and torn the person apart. But now, Dustless was Itsuka Kotori's savior, and her favorability towards Dustless had reached 100%. "You stopped." Itsuka Kotori was surprised to find that Dustless had stopped hitting her. She didn't know why, but she didn't feel happy. Instead, she felt a sense of melancholy. Itsuka Kotori didn't know why, but she didn't say it out loud. Don't think that this is the end. Dustless, I won't let you go so easily." Itsuka Kotori looked at Dustless and gritted her teeth. She looked very angry. After all, being hit on the butt was something that any girl would find hard to accept. She might even hate the person who hit her butt for the rest of her life. However, Wuxian turned a deaf ear to her. He leaned over and pressed Itsuka Kotori onto the bedding. What are you doing?" Being pressed down by Dustless, Itsuka Kotori asked in fear. Huff 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 huff. Because the two were so close, Itsuka Kotori could even smell Dustless's breath. The warm breath blew on her cheeks and the blush on her face turned even redder. "The time is right." Dustless stared at Itsuka Kotori's face that was inches away from his. His whole body pressed down on her and he could even feel her racing heartbeat. Finally, under Itsuka Kotori's shocked gaze, Dustless kissed her. Itsuka Kotori stared blankly at Dustless. Her mind went blank. She didn't expect Dustless to be so daring. Woo 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 woo. After being stunned for a moment, Itsuka Kotori suddenly struggled. However, her weak strength was nothing compared to Dustless. He was simply too weak. Dustless even stroked her on purpose. Soon, Itsuka Kotori's breathing quickened and her body temperature rose rapidly. She subconsciously obeyed Dustless. Boom boom boom. Itsuka Kotori's body suddenly shone with a bright white light. Immediately afterward, a large amount of energy surged out of her body and silently entered Dustless's body. The speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, the power in Itachi Koto was completely drained. Soon after, the pajamas on her body also disappeared. Okay. Dustless immediately moved away from the girl's lips when he felt Koteri's power entering his body. Okay. After the two separated, Itsuka Koteri regained her consciousness. She gritted her teeth. After their lips parted, Dustless's lustful handsome face returned to its usual coldness. Could it be, you were faking it just now? Itsuka Koteri looked directly into Wu Chen's eyes and asked in a perturbed manner, did you purposely make that expression of lust for me in order to seal away my fairy power? So what if I did and so what if I didn't? Dustless asked calmly. His tone was completely different from before. He sensed the power in his body and said slowly, just like you said, we both took what we needed. Itsuka Koteri's heart felt empty after hearing this. Although she was glad that her power was sealed, the words, we both took what we needed, still hurt her. Little girl. Dustless looked at the disappointed Itsuka Koteri and teased, don't tell me you like me? What a sin. Itsuka Koteri put her hands on her hips and said arrogantly, even if all the men in the world died, I wouldn't consider you. You sure are stubborn. Dustless rolled his eyes and said with a sigh, also don't know who was the one who was delirious with emotion just now and almost fainted over. You're asking for it. Itsuka Koteri's face turned red and kicked at Qin Xiaobei. Plop. Who would have thought that Dustless would be able to dodge her leg easily with a god-tier skill? He then flipped over and pressed Koteri onto the bed again. Little girl. Dustless moved closer to Itsuka Koteri. They looked into each other's eyes. Then Dustless raised his right hand. Don't do anything stupid. Itsuka Koteri was very nervous. She thought that Dustless was going to spank her again. She cursed in her heart. This bastard, he's going to take advantage of me again. He's the one who likes me. But just when Itsuka Koteri thought that Dustless was going to spank her again, Dustless raised his right hand and pointed at the closed door. Go out, I won't send you off. Good night. Dustless then pushed Itsuka Koteri away and closed his eyes in satisfaction. He said, you've disturbed me for a while. Don't disturb my sleep. Itsuka Koteri's mouth twitched and almost vomited blood. She was naked, but this bastard was looking at her with disdain. She was pissed again. You want me to leave? I'm not leaving. I'm going to sleep here tonight. I'm going to snatch your bed and sleep with your woman. Remember this, bastard, this is my home. Dustless's words angered Itsuka Koteri. She was like an exploding barrel of gunpowder, glaring at Dustless. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 21:15. Itsuka Koteri's eyes were burning with fire. Her already deep red eyes were now even redder, as if they were blood red. It was clear that she was furious with Dustless. Do you think I will leave just because you told me to? No way. Itsuka Koteri put her hands on her hips. Her beautiful eyes were filled with anger and dissatisfaction. This was her home and Dustless, an outsider, had chased her away time and time again. How despicable. Tisk. Dustless opened his eyes again and said with a smile, you are quite ambitious. You want to sleep with me and you want to sleep with me. If this isn't love, then what is? For a violent girl like you, having too much charm is not a good thing. You win. Just wait and see. Itsuka Koteri was speechless. She cursed him in her mind. In the end, he glared fiercely at Wu Chen. Then he turned around and left in indignation. He helplessly discovered that he was far from being Wu Chen's opponent in terms of strength or bickering. If he continued to stay, he would only bring disgrace upon himself. Bang! Itsuka Koteri kicked the door open and walked out of Dustless's room in a huff. She didn't go back to her own room. Instead, she went to take a shower. Don't fall into my hands. Itsuka Koteri mumbled as she walked away. Dustless had given her quite a blow. That despicable guy doesn't know how to read people's minds. Itsuka Koteri lay in the warm pool and stared at the ceiling. She was silent for a while, then a strange smile appeared on her face. Or does Dustless have a problem in that area? He didn't even look at my naked body. He even looked at me with disdain. Despicable guy, am I that despicable? Here, Itsuka Koteri touched her face and looked at her reflection in the water. Her perfect facial features were flawless. It must be Dustless's problem, which is why he can look at me so calmly. After much consideration, Itsuka Kotori concluded that it was Dustless's problem. It must be a physical defect. If Dustless knew that Kotori dared to make up stories about him like this, he would definitely teach her a lesson. He had to admit that women were strange creatures. When you took the initiative to pay attention to them, you would think that they were up to no good. If you ignored them, they would think that you were looking down on them. Sometimes they were really unreasonable. On the other hand, Dustless had just sent Itsuka Kotori away and was about to have a good night's sleep when an unexpected intruder came to visit him. Plop. Compared to Itsuka Kotori, this intruder was much braver. She jumped down from the sky and landed on Dustless's bed. Due to the strength of this sudden attack, Dustless's bed was crushed. Is there an end to this? Wuxian raised his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He stared at the perfect body in front of him and rubbed his temples. Did you go to the wrong place? 10 fragrance. If you want to take a bath, you should go to the bathroom. The young girl that entered his eyes was Nightblade God 10 fragrances. However, what gave him a headache was that the current her was only wearing a simple bathrobe. Her white skin was in full view. I just saw Kotori leave your room. What unspeakable secrets did you two do? Nightsword God 10 fragrance glared at Dustless. His cheeks were puffed up and his gem-like eyes were filled with a strong desire to possess Dustless. Dustless recalled his previous experience and said lazily, "It's nothing. Kotori was just trying to take advantage of me by kissing me secretly." Plop. However, as soon as Dustless finished speaking, Toka pounced on him. Her body was like a snake and she skillfully twisted with Dustless. Not only that, she also touched Dustless. Her restless hands touched all over Dustless's body. She even carefully touched some important places through his pajamas. Why are there so many female perverts these days? Dustless's mouth twitched. He felt helpless. Ever since he tamed Toka, this innocent girl had developed a strong sense of dependence on him. She clung to Dustless all day long. "Don't touch me. Get your hands off me." Perceiving that the most important place had been attacked, even with Dustless's calm disposition, his face collapsed. That place was not to be touched casually. "Kotori kissed you." Toka pouted and complained, "What's wrong with me touching you? This can improve our relationship. Don't tell me you hate me." "Who told you all this nonsense?" When Wuxian heard this, he was speechless to the extreme. "It's okay to enhance feelings, but do you have to touch me indiscriminately?" Wuxian was also secretly conflicted about this. Daoist Toka was too naive and the school was quite a lively place. There were many fujoshis around her. "Don't touch me." Seeing that the girl didn't know when to back off, Wuxian's tone inevitably became more serious and even carried a hint of reprimand. Nightblade God 10 Fragrance's body suddenly trembled slightly and stopped moving. She looked at Wuxian pitifully. "Don't you hate me?" "You just misunderstood," Dustless replied calmly. If you don't, prove it now." Toka's eyes flashed with slyness. She giggled and pounced on Dustless again. This time she pressed down on Dustless. Her eyes flickered with a terrifying green light. She waved her arms and even wanted to hold Dustless in her arms. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 21:16. Caught off guard, Dustless was hugged tightly. Night Sword God Tosin also squeezed hard, as if she wanted to merge Dustless into her body. The sudden attack was inexplicable and Wuxian was also a little stuffy for a moment. Her eyes were fixed on Nightblade God 10 Fragrance until her breathing became difficult, and the girl then turned her head. Staring at the perfect silhouette in front of him, Dustless said unhappily, "Tosin, if you really like me, you should let me go immediately." Night Sword God Tosin was stunned at first, then asked in confusion, "It's because I care about you that we should get closer, right? That's what the people in school said." "So it was those fujoshis who taught you that?" Hearing this, Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He knew that there was a weird fujoshis trio in Lichon High School. In the original work, they were the ones who came up with ideas to help Tosin conquer Gohei Shido. "But you're about to strangle me." Dustless's breathing became unnatural. His cheeks were slightly red and filled with embarrassment. He looked at Night Sword God Tosin speechlessly. Sorry, I'll let go now." Night Sword God Tosin smiled embarrassedly and quickly let go of Dustless. She scratched her head and smiled. I was too excited just now and only cared about you so I forgot. Won't be like this next time. Dustless just rolled his eyes. If he was a normal human he would probably be dead now. After all, Night Sword God Tosin hadn't sealed the power of the elves yet. Her power was unreliable. Cut the crap. Tell me what you want. Dustless waved his hand and stared at Night Sword God Tosin, who was only wearing a bathrobe. Since this little girl wasn't here to take a bath, then she must have some other purpose for coming to him in a bathrobe. Can't I come to you for no reason? Night Blade God Ten Fragrance looked at Dustless with dissatisfaction. Her big watery eyes stared at Dustless. Dustless could hear the deep resentment in her words clearly. Her beautiful eyes stared at Dustless. Finally, Night Blade God Ten Fragrance smiled and hugged Dustless's right arm. Let's sleep together. It's more intimate. Cordial. Dustless rolled his eyes when he heard this. He was sure that someone else had instigated Nightsword God Toka to do this. Such an innocent girl was easily tricked. That's enough. You still need to go to school tomorrow. Go back to sleep now. Dustless stared unblinkingly at the young girl who was crawling on top of him. Being pressed down, he couldn't help but feel a little strange in his heart. Are you looking down on me? You were fine when you were with Kodori, so why did you change your mind when it came to me? Also, you said before that Kodori kissed you. Well, Night Blade God Ten Fragrance looked at Dustless with a mischievous smile. Her eyes were shining. She pointed at her own face and said in an abnormally serious tone, "You have to kiss me too." Hearing this, Dustless looked at Night Blade God Ten Fragrance with even more hesitation. He knew that this girl was very aggressive and wouldn't give up easily until she achieved her goal. If he wasn't willing to submit, she definitely wouldn't leave. Thus, after a slight hesitation, Dustless raised his head slightly and pressed his lips against hers. Everything happened so suddenly that Night Blade God Ten Fragrance looked at Wuxian blankly. She stared blankly at the face that was so close to her. Seconds turned into minutes. Soon Night Blade God Ten Fragrance felt her body temperature rise. Her small face was bright red and a nameless fire spread in her body. Night Blade God Ten Fragrance clenched her small hands tightly. Her heartbeat sped up and she didn't dare to look at Dustless's eyes. Buzz buzz buzz. At the same time, a huge white light suddenly swept across Night Blade God Ten Fragrance's body. It was very dazzling and a huge cocoon of light emitted a holy aura. This is... Dustless slightly narrowed his eyes. Thinking back to the scene just now, he couldn't help but sigh. He was about to move away from Night Blade God Ten Fragrance's lips, but he lowered his body and kissed Night Blade God Ten Fragrance's lips again. This huge cocoon of light emitting a holy aura was exactly the same as the one that appeared on Kodori God Ten Fragrance's body. It was the precursor to sealing the elf's power. It also meant that Night Blade God Ten Fragrance was very shy at this moment. She was in the best state to seal her power. Dustless only needed to add a little more fuel to the fire to completely seal her power. Thinking for a moment, Dustless's hands gently moved over Ten Fragrance's body. He gently untied her bathrobe and touched her snow-white skin. No, don't touch me. I feel very uncomfortable. It's like I'm burning up. Night Blade God Ten Fragrance's eyes were hazy as she protested. However, Dustless didn't care at all. He continued to do what he wanted, unscrupulously invading the young girl's body. He didn't let go of a single inch of her skin. Night Blade God Ten Fragrance trembled uncontrollably where Dustless touched. Her breathing sped up and she let out a faint moan. Her body was soft, and even if she wanted to push Dustless away, she didn't have the extra strength. This state didn't last long. Night Blade God Ten Fragrance's power flowed through their lips and into Dustless's body. Bang. Time passed quickly, and after 5 or 6 seconds, the light cocoon on Toka's body exploded, revealing the girl's cute body. Just like when Kodori was sealed, Toka's clothes were gone as well. Damn it. After a long while, their lips parted. Dustless was the first to sigh. However, he didn't expect his words to anger the shy Ten Fragrance. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 gifts plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 21:17. You dare to say that you want my life? How dare you, you little brat? You clearly took advantage of me, yet you say that you want my life. Very well, you have really angered me this time, Dustless. Night Sword God 10 Fragrance stared at Dustless with an extremely unfriendly gaze. Her snow-white arms were tightly gripping Dustless, and her eyes were filled with an ominous aura. It felt as if she wanted to tear Dustless apart alive. That's right. I have worked hard to seal your powers. Don't you think that I have to suffer? I even have to accompany you in your nonsense in the middle of the night. Dustless nodded indifferently. He was not afraid of 10 Fragrance's greedy eyes at all. He said leisurely, moreover, sealing the powers of fairies is extremely troublesome. I have to make all of you feel embarrassed. What a chore. Poor me, this skinny body of mine has to be ravaged by you. Dustless complained bitterly like a little wife who had been bullied. Night Sword God 10 Fragrance was furious. How could there be such a shameless person in this world? In all fairness, Dustless was not good at dating. After all, he was an old monster who had lived for hundreds of years. Anyone would find it strange to take the initiative to hit on a teenage girl and go on a date with her. How dare you say that kissing me is a chore? Apologize to me or I will beat you up. Night Sword God 10 Fragrance rudely threw Dustless away. She crossed her arms in front of her and said proudly, kissing me is a blessing that you have accumulated over 8 lifetimes. Dustless smiled and stared at the arrogant girl. Her voluptuous body was impeccable as if it was sculpted by the heavens. Although she was still very young, only 17 years old, Dustless could not find any flaws. The places that should be protruding were definitely not flat. Apologize to me now. Night Sword God 10 Fragrance sat naked on top of Dustless. She raised her fist and repeated her words in a threatening tone. She stared at Dustless covetously as if she was not done yet. You want me to apologize to you? Dream on. Dustless curled his lips in disdain. Soon after, he stared playfully at the exquisite and translucent body. Suddenly, he pointed out the window and said, "Look, the plane carrying soybean flour and bread is coming." These words seemed to be filled with endless magic, and Yadao Shintoxiang's gaze immediately shifted over. You tricked me. Night Blade God Toka snorted and looked out the window for a long time. She didn't see the plane carrying soybean flour bread, and she had never heard of a plane carrying soybean flour bread. After thinking about it for a while, Yadao God Toxiang realized that he had been tricked by Dustless. Pa asterisk pa asterisk pa. Just as he was about to teach Dustless a lesson, Night Blade God Toxiang suddenly felt a sharp pain. He looked down and saw 2 snow-white peaks the size of bowls swaying back and forth. There was also a clear handprint on them. Damn pervert, I'm going to kill you. Tokisaki Kurumi clenched her teeth in anger and her face turned red. It was fine if Dustless didn't admit his mistake, but what was worse was that he dared to attack her. He didn't put her in his eyes at all. There are too many people who want to kill me. Even if they lined up, they wouldn't be able to wait for you. Dustless snorted disapprovingly and raised his right hand again. Pa asterisk pa asterisk pa. This time, there was also a bright red handprint on Night Blade God Toxiang's long white legs. She clenched her teeth in pain, and the fire in her heart burned even more fiercely. If you act rashly again, it will be there next time. Dustless chuckled, and his expression was as vulgar as it could be. He stared at the most important part of a woman, and his narrowed eyes were as sharp as a blade. Night Blade God Toxiang felt a chill run down her spine. Just you wait, damn pervert. Next time, I'll hang you up and beat you up so badly that even your parents won't recognize you. Night Blade God Toxiang glared at Dustless fiercely and fled in a sorry state. In the dark room, Dustless was the only one left. I finally scared them away. It wasn't easy for me. They're really a bunch of living ancestors. Dustless let out a heavy breath and looked at the ceiling with hesitation. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. Sometimes, dealing with unreasonable women is even more troublesome than dealing with powerful enemies. When dealing with powerful enemies, it was enough to subdue them with fists. A woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the sea. This method was useless on women, especially those unreasonable women. Dustless closed his eyes tiredly. After being tormented for half the night, he was really tired. The next morning, the sun hung high in the eastern sky, driving away the cold night. The light of dawn shone all over the world, and the winter sun was especially warm. Dustless climbed out of bed early, and after a simple wash, he went to class at Lichon High School. After all, he was now a physical education teacher there and he hadn't quit his job yet. Buzz buzz buzz. Suddenly, there was an inexplicable throbbing in the depths of the sky. The transparent sphere continued to expand, swallowing the surrounding sky, and became bigger and bigger. It was full of destructive power and everything that came into contact with it was destroyed. I've encountered such bad luck early in the morning. What an unlucky year. But then again, this seems to be the so-called spacequake. Looking up at the sky, Dustless's eyes flashed with a strange light. Unlike the panicked crowd around him, Dustless's commanding eyes were filled with expectation. I'd like to see who exactly is the person who dares to visit my territory so rashly. With a faint evil smile on the corner of his mouth, Dustless's face was full of interest. He completely ignored the strange eyes of the people around him. In the eyes of these ordinary people, he probably didn't want to live anymore. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 21:18. Vroom vroom vroom. The purple energy ball grew bigger and bigger, swallowing all the space around it. The violent force tore the city on the ground apart. In an instant, sand and dust were everywhere, and the bottom area of the spacequake was a mess. No wonder humans hate elves so much. Looking at the surrounding ruins, Dustless lowered his head and remained silent. Humans were sentimental creatures. They could only watch helplessly as their home was mercilessly destroyed. Naturally, they would hate the elves who were the initiators of all this. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. At the same time, a series of flaming missiles came from afar, attacking the gradually expanding spacequake in a frenzy, trying to stop it from expanding. Boom boom boom. A large number of missiles exploded, and the blue sky suddenly burned with raging flames. The pungent smell of gunpowder spread to every corner of the city along with the wind. This group of AST members are all reckless. Even if they hate elves, they don't have to be so crazy. There are still many people around who haven't evacuated. Dustless frowned and looked up at the AST flying in the sky. He could not help but shake his head and immediately left lazily. Boom. It was worth mentioning that the attack of the AST members had an unexpected effect. The constantly expanding spacequake miraculously stopped. Although it offset the continued expansion of the spacequake in a certain sense, the huge energy ball eventually exploded. Oh no! The captain of the AST team, Liaozi under the sun, stared at the crack on the spacequake. The terrifying energy tide overflowed from the crack, and the power that seeped out turned into a violent storm. The AST members were blown back and it was difficult for them to stabilize their bodies. Is this the power to control the wind? Looks like it's the two of them. Wu Chen's footsteps suddenly stopped. He looked up at the raging wind and waves in the sky. It was like a tornado. It was extremely terrifying. Even the lazy white clouds were blown away by the hurricane and disappeared without a trace. Dustless could only think of two elves with such an ability, Yaji Yaji and Yaji Xinjian. It's already difficult for this group of AST to deal with one elf. If it's two, it's enough to make them suffer. Dustless shook his head. It was not that he looked down on AST, but humans were still humans. It was too difficult for them to compete with the elves. Bang! Accompanied by a loud rumbling sound, the space exploded with a bang. Immediately after, violent wind waves swept out, blowing Dustless's hair to one side. Amidst the dense waves, one could even see flowing lights riding the wind. Upon closer inspection, they were the sisters Bawu Yijia and Bawu Xixian. However, all of this had nothing to do with Dustless. He merely took a few more glances before leisurely leaving. Bang! The moment he turned around, Dustless suddenly realized that he had bumped into a soft body, and because he had used too much strength, he had accidentally knocked her over. Looking down, it was a beautiful blonde woman. This person's appearance was rather fresh. His complexion was slightly pale and his figure was a little thin. His emerald eyes were like gems embedded in his eye sockets. They were like the stars hanging high in the sky. The more one looked at him, the more interesting he became. Why does he look so familiar? Dustless stared at the girl without moving. Perhaps because the memories in his mind were too vast, he could not recall the origin of this person for a moment. Sorry, I was distracted. After thinking for a long time, Dustless no longer hesitated. He scratched his head and apologized. I have been observing the battle between the elves and Asi. Both. The blonde girl stared at Dustless in surprise. A ripple flashed through her eyes. She looked at the sisters Wuxia and Zhou Xian. She murmured softly, "Ordinary people don't know that they are elves. For ordinary humans they would not be able to tell that Zhou Xian and Wuxia were elves." Dustless was admitting it without being pressed. Wuxian just shrugged his shoulders and said indifferently, "I never said that I was an ordinary person. You, on the other hand, when the spacequake came, everyone ran for their lives, but you didn't fear death and went to the center to join the fun." "Same to you. I have the same purpose as you." The blonde girl frowned slightly and stared at Dustless carefully. She saw that he had a faint smile on his face. His bright eyes were full of wisdom. He looked quite like a professor in some university, but he was a little too young. However, the face in front of her was very mature and calm. "First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Elaine Mira-Methers. Nice to meet you." The blonde girl introduced herself in a gentle tone. Her temperament was calm and had a kind of Western gentlemanly demeanor. She was obviously wary of Dustless, but it was difficult to be angry. No wonder I felt that it was familiar. "It's her." The confusion in his eyes disappeared. Dustless suddenly remembered the girl's experience. Elaine Mira-Methers was the second executive department head of the DM Society. She was Wilcourt's secretary and right-hand man. She was very loyal and was the world's strongest magician. She had the highest precision of all magicians. She was the strongest when controlling the display device and was not afraid of any threats. Overall, she was considered an outstanding talent among humans. Her strength was quite strong. If I remember correctly, you are called Dustless, right? Although you are not an elf, your strength is not weaker than an elf at all. In fact, you are even stronger. Elaine had obviously investigated Dustless's information. She looked at the face in front of her with a burning gaze and said with a chuckle, "Are you interested in joining our dim society? With your ability, you will definitely be put in an important position." "Put in an important position? Little girl, don't tell me you are fooling me like a 3-year-old child?" Dustless curled his lips in disdain and stared at the blonde girl in front of him with a sneer. "The important position you are talking about is to catch me and use me as a lab rat for experiments, right? P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates." Chapter 21:19. Irene's eyes stared straight at Dustless. Her plain and beautiful pupils were flowing with an oppressive light, trying to see through Dustless. She never thought that Dustless would be so direct and simply say the purpose of winning him over. It was exactly as Dustless had guessed. Irene and the company behind her just wanted to study Dustless's body and the source of his power. After all, a human like Dustless who was not an elf but could easily crush an elf was indeed incredible. This guy is really smart. He knows my purpose and still dares to stand here. This shows that he has a great chance of escaping from me and even defeating me. This is interesting. The faint smile on the corner of her mouth disappeared. Irene cleared her throat. She certainly would not admit to Dustless's previous words. She said, "Using you as a lab rat to study? That's just your wishful thinking. We're a decent company. We'll never do those crazy things. You may have heard about our company before, but I want to tell you that it's all slander by other companies. They just want to destroy our company." "Bullshit." Dustless just sneered and interrupted Irene's speech very rudely. "Don't think that I don't know about your shady business. Your company is obsessed with the power of elves. It is simply wishful thinking to want to capture 10 fragrances and possess the power of elves. If it was before, Dustless naturally would not meddle in this kind of thing, but it was different now. Dao Xian, 10 fragrances, and the others had a good relationship with Dustless. Naturally, they would not watch them be captured. "Your Excellency, please pay attention to your wording." Irene's smiling face froze. She was very angry with Dustless. This bastard actually thought that her words were bullshit. Even a clay figurine would be angered, not to mention her, the world's #1 magician. There is a saying that if you do not have a guilty conscience, you will not be afraid of ghosts knocking on your door. If I'm wrong, you can just laugh it off and don't take it to heart. Now that your reaction is so intense, it shows that your company is a black nest. Dustless didn't hold back at all as he sneered, "Don't think I don't know what your goal is. Let's not talk about the elves for now. Let's talk about Shido's sister." You know better than me what you did to her, right? Hearing this, Irene's face turned ugly. Obviously, she was not suitable for lying. She was immediately embarrassed and could not find the words to respond to Dustless. After all, this is the truth. Because Chong Gongzhen's body was used as an experiment, she would definitely die within 10 years. How about this? Dustless stared at Irene for a while before stopping in front of her. He suddenly grabbed her chin and said with a smile, "Although your figure is a bit thin, it's barely passable. How about this? You can be my bed-warming maid for the rest of your life. I'll give you 10 times the benefits your boss gave you. How about that? You bastard. Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because the higher-ups think highly of you. Don't challenge my bottom line." Hearing this, Irene's eyes were filled with anger. She stared at Dustless with uncertainty. Her eyes were filled with a terrifying scarlet aura. She subconsciously clenched her fists. "Hehe, you want to be rough with me? Just you? Do you know the consequences of an ant challenging a giant? Idiot." Dustless looked at Irene with a mocking smile. Not only was he not intimidated by the girl's aura, but he was also gradually getting interested. Originally, he just wanted to teach this arrogant girl a lesson. He didn't expect her to take a mile after taking an inch. "I know that you're the strongest magician. Your combat power is unquestionable." Dustless stared at Irene's pretty face. He immediately chuckled and said, "But I'm sure you've investigated my information and know my combat power. You don't have the confidence to defeat me. Otherwise, with your company's way of doing things, you would have sent people to capture me long ago, right? The strong never cared about the feelings of the weak." If Dustless was the prey in Irene's eyes, he might have been captured the moment he appeared in this world. Just like how he captured the elves later on, the reason was too superfluous. "You can do something out of line to challenge me." Irene stared at Dustless expressionlessly. Her eyes were full of hostility. She was clearly warning Dustless not to act rashly. "I forgot to tell you that my temper may be a little strange. Those things that I'm not allowed to do, I just like to persevere and complete them. For example, right now, you hope that I don't provoke you, but I like to seek death. So what if I provoke your bottom line?" Dustless's eyes were full of mockery. One of his large hands grabbed Irene's chin, while the other hand grabbed her shirt. With a casual tug, Dustless tore the corner of Irene's straight suit. Her snow-white skin was faintly discernible, and one could clearly see the huge ball of flesh. "Let me get this straight. Being able to warm my bed with you is the blessing of 8 lifetimes. There have been many people who wanted to get on my bed but didn't have the chance. I repeat, this is because I think highly of you." Dustless spoke frankly. His expression deeply angered Irene. However, this was also an undeniable fact. After all, most of Dustless's female confidants were extremely powerful. For example, Kagaya Otsutsuki, Unohana Retsu, or Boa Hancock. Compared to them, Irene was not worth mentioning, whether it was in terms of strength or beauty. "Good, very good." Irene trembled in anger. A gentle breeze blew and her face was cold. However, her heart was like an exploding volcano. Anger filled her mind. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 21:20. Elaine was so angry that she was trembling. No matter what, she was still the strongest magician in the human race. But facing Dustless at this moment, let alone respect, the other party didn't even put her in his eyes. He treated her like a pawn and his words were filled with endless contempt and ridicule. "You forced me to do this." Irene coldly looked at Dustless. Suddenly, a light appeared on her body and shiny equipment slowly appeared. It seemed that she could not help but want to teach Dustless a lesson. However, at this moment a sudden change occurred. Boom, boom, boom. Above the horizon, a wave of destruction suddenly descended. It was like a scythe that swept away everything on the ground. Dustless was still fine. After all, he had seen too many storms and waves. He had experienced too many major events. However, Irene was in an extremely difficult situation. Everything happened so suddenly. Her entire person was like a kite with a broken string as she flew out powerlessly. Bang! Irene's body heavily crashed to the ground. Her face was pale and a faint trace of blood seeped from the corner of her mouth. "These despicable and arrogant elves, just you wait." Irene was so angry that she gritted her teeth. She looked up at the two people fighting in the sky, feeling extremely indignant. Wuxia and Zhou Xian were the instigators of the sudden storm just now. Tee little girl, you're in such a sorry state. Wu Chen, who was in the middle of the storm, stood tall and straight like a javelin. His relaxed and slow pace obviously showed that he did not put the storm around him in his eyes. How about it? Do you agree to my conditions now? Dustless stroked Irene's smooth chin and chuckled. Don't worry, I just need a maid to warm my bed. You've gone too far. If you want to humiliate me, why don't you just kill me? Irene's face was filled with anger as she glared at Dustless. If it wasn't for the fact that she was suddenly injured, which made it extremely painful to move, she definitely would not mind giving Dustless a few slaps. Now that she had been severely injured by those despicable elves and could not move, Dustless was clearly taking advantage of this situation. You want me to kill you? I won't kill you. Letting you die so casually would be letting you off too easily. Dustless smiled faintly. Naturally, he would not be provoked. What if you do something perverted to me? Looking gloomily at Dustless, Elaine's eyes were filled with disgust and helplessness. There was nothing he could do about it. The situation was beyond his control. He had no choice but to lower his head. Afraid that I'll do something perverted? Hearing this, Dustless couldn't help but laugh. He playfully touched the girl's face. You're quite pretty, but I'm really not interested in you. Your two lumps of meat are too skinny, not to my liking. Staring at Eileen's snow-white ball, Wu Chen only glanced at it casually. Irene was fuming with anger. She was hit hard by Dustless's words. Die for me, you stinky brat who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. As soon as his voice fell, Irene's fragrant foot smashed over. Bang! Dustless casually grabbed it and subdued it. His cold eyes did not have a trace of emotion. What if I strip you naked on the streets? Gulp. Hearing this, Irene instantly shivered. She looked at Dustless in fear, then said submissively, Sorry, I was wrong. I will definitely be obedient in the future. At least you know what's good for you. Dustless lightly snorted. Just as he was about to stand up, he suddenly felt a large amount of softness wrap around him. Hey guys, what do you want? Could it be that you guys think I'm made of mud and want to test my strength? To his left and right were the unexpected Bichiwu Yaguya and Bichiwu Xian. Hey Xian, we've competed in so many events, but there's never been a winner. This time let's do something different. Whoever this brat falls for first will win. How about that? Bichiwu Yaguya looked at Bichiwu Xian provocatively. At the same time, he gave Dustless a few coquettish glances as if to say, You're lucky, brat. What does this have to do with me? The corner of Dustless's mouth twitched when he heard this. He felt as if he had been innocently shot while lying down. He cursed in his heart. You guys can compete, but what does it have to do with me? Agreed. The naturally naive Bichiwu Xian readily agreed without hesitation. She was extremely decisive and did not even bat an eyelid. Now there's a good show to watch. Irene looked at Dustless with a gloating expression. Even the mission of roping him in had been thrown out of the window. Seeing Dustless's gloomy face, she felt particularly happy. However, she had to admit that Dustless's luck with women was really good. Just standing on the street, there were beauties sending themselves to his door, making others envious. Let's start now. I'll definitely make you accept your defeat wholeheartedly. Bichiwu Yaguya looked down at Bichiwu Xian arrogantly. Then he hugged Dustless tightly, wanting to take him into his arms. Hurry up and fall for me. Bichiwu Yaguya almost rode on Dustless as if he wanted to merge himself with Dustless, for fear that Bichiwu Xian would snatch him away. Hurry up and fall for you. Dustless's face was extremely dark. If he was not different from ordinary people, he would have been strangled to death. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 21-21. Dustless was very familiar with the two girls in front of him, and he knew that they had no ill intentions. Otherwise he would have slapped them to death already. Although the elves were powerful, they were still nothing to Dustless. You want me to be infatuated with the two of you? Dustless stared at the two with great interest. His eyes suddenly narrowed and a dangerous light danced in his eyes. Under this clear gaze, everyone felt like they were naked and exposed to Dustless's eyes. Hey hey hey. You look so gentle, why are you looking at people with such vulgar eyes? Under Dustless's gaze, Yata's body twisted and turned, and her face was slightly red. He was quite uncomfortable. You want me to be infatuated with the two of you? Dustless looked back and forth between the two girls as he chuckled and said, It's very simple. I love watching women fight. You can continue now. Rolling his eyes, Wuxian revealed a pair of clear eyes. His expression looked harmless to humans and animals. This scum is really bad. He wants the two sisters to kill each other. Irene stared at Dustless with great surprise, and the shock in her crystalline eyes could not be concealed. Dustless and Ratatoskr were inextricably linked. In her understanding, Dustless's actions should be to save the elves. She did not expect this guy to want the two girls to kill each other. His actions were both surprising and puzzling. What an interesting guy. Irene could not help but look at the calm Dustless and sneered. Although the elves are a bit simple-minded, do you think others are idiots? Do you think they'll kill each other just because you want them to? How can they be so obedient? However, the two elven girls' following reply made Dustless's jaw drop. Okay, I'll listen to you. Without even thinking, Yata nodded and looked at Yata with a cold light in her eyes, full of battle intent. I agree. Yata only said 2 words, but her gaze was extremely determined. Boom boom boom. Suddenly, an extremely powerful impact burst out from the two of them. A violent hurricane swept out. The two women were shrouded in thick tornadoes. They roared in the sky and the surrounding buildings were swept up one after another. Circles and circles of tornadoes spun rapidly. Due to the wind speed being too fast, the formless tornadoes had turned into blades that could be seen with the naked eye. A slight touch would probably cause one's body to bleed profusely. The building ruins that were swept up would also be sliced into pieces. This is too childish. Irene looked at the two of them in disbelief. Then she looked at Dustless's unmoved expression and scolded, Why are these two brats so childish? Can't you see that this is to make you kill each other on purpose? In fact, Irene wasn't the only one who was stunned. The members of Ratatoskr were also stunned. Is Dustless too smart or are these two elves too naive? Itsuka Kodori was also stunned. She bit the lollipop in her mouth subconsciously. She didn't expect these two elves to be so obedient. Especially when they met Dustless for the first time, they were so obedient. Quickly show me the data of those two elves. Itsuka Kodori's eyes turned slightly and she couldn't wait to order Kyuhei. Commander, I have seen the favorability of those two elves to Dustless. Murasame Rain slowly walked over, put the freshly brewed coffee aside, looked at the data and explained. At first, the favorability of Dustless was only 10%, but after Dustless asked them to duel, the favorability climbed to an astonishing 40%. Hearing this, Itsuka Kodori clenched her teeth and said in disbelief, I thought the favorability of the two elves to Dustless would drop to negative, but it increased by 30%. God, is there a mistake? As an outsider, I can see that Dustless is deliberately making the two elves kill each other, but the favorability didn't decrease but increased. It's really strange. No, this may be Dustless's intention. Murasame Rain looked at the lazy Dustless through the screen, and after thinking for a few seconds she explained, Perhaps Dustless knows the character of the two elves and did this deliberately. I'm afraid that refusing will cause more chaos. Not to mention Murasame Rain really guessed it right. Dustless knew the character of Wuxia and Zhou Xian. After living for so long, day after day, year after year, Dustless's heart had been tempered thousands of times. How could he be easily infatuated with others? Therefore he could only think of other ways to transfer the problem. It was not a big problem to let the two elves fight. Anyway, their strength was at the same level and no one could do anything to each other. In the end they could only stop. The war between women looks particularly pleasing to the eye. Looking up at the sky, above the sky, two streamers were fighting with all their strength and the loud noise was very oppressive. Why is it so easy to tame the elves? Irene's eyes were fixed on Dustless's body and she complained in a sour tone. If I were a man, maybe the two elves just now would choose me instead of Dustless. Looking at this momentum, I'm afraid I don't need to do anything. I can just use my mouth to subdue them. With the appearance of the elves, the residents around fled. Only Dustless was left. Wuxia and Zhou Xian could only choose him. If you were a man. Hearing Irene's soft complaint, Dustless just smiled and joked. They wouldn't be obedient. Why? Irene asked puzzledly. Idiot. Glancing at Irene, Dustless rolled his eyes and said, Men and women can change sex. Do I still need you? P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 21-22. You are shameless. Irene glared at Dustless, gritting her teeth angrily, and there were clearly visible traces of blood on her tongue. It's not that she was narrow-minded, but this guy's words were too irritating. You continue to play, I'm going to teach. Completely ignoring the angry Irene, Dustless left her a lazy back. Boom boom boom. The battle between the two people in the sky was still going on fiercely, but as Dustless imagined, Wuxia and Zhou Xian couldn't do anything to each other. Sigh. Staring at Dustless's back, Irene just sighed helplessly. The thin back looked vulnerable, but for Irene, it was the most troublesome and dangerous enemy. Time flies, and it was noon in the blink of an eye in the PE teacher's office. Dustless-kun, I heard that you will have a new assistant to report. Murasame Rain stared at Dustless, who was sleeping on the table and was secretly entangled. Where did this guy come to be a teacher? He was obviously lazy and sleeping. He was so comfortable. New assistant? Rubbing his sleepy eyes, Dustless glanced at Murasame Rain and complained, Is it an undercover like you? I have never heard of a PE teacher who needs an assistant. Hearing this, Murasame Rain was silent. This matter was really a bit strange. What did a PE teacher need to stop? Including Murasame Rain, this assistant was not worthy of the name. I want to see who is coming to die. Looking out of the window in boredom, Dustless's slack eyes gradually had a little more expectation. Anyway, it was just a way to pass the boring time. By the way, how are the two elves today? With a change of topic, Dustless suddenly remembered Wuxia and Zhou Xian, and asked curiously, were they killed by AST? Thanks to you they didn't. The two sisters left safe and sound. Rain Murasame shook her head slightly and said with a smile, The strongest in AST is Tobi Origami, but since you saved her parents, her hatred for elves has been greatly reduced. Although she still works in AST, she has not killed anyone and her hatred for elves has decreased a lot. Ta-da! Suddenly, a creaking sound came from the corridor. Are they coming? Sounds like the sound of high heels. In other words, is it a woman? Wu Chen's eyes lit up a little. He looked at the closed door with interest. He wanted to see who this inexplicable assistant was. Creak. The locked door was suddenly opened, revealing a delicate face. The emerald eyes were very dazzling. The moment she appeared, Dustless's sight could no longer move. It was not that this woman's appearance was outstanding. Although she looked good, her skin was white and her appearance was outstanding, but this was not what Dustless cared about the most. It was that this so-called assistant was a familiar person, and she had a grudge with Dustless before. Are you here to pick a fight? So, then congratulations, you will definitely suffer my revenge. Staring at the gentle girl, Dustless said faintly. This assistant was not someone else, it was Irene who he met before. I don't understand what you are talking about. Irene shook her head, looked at Dustless's black eyes and said frankly, I am just your assistant. Before this, I didn't know that the physical education teacher of this school was you, Dustless. You didn't know it was me? You don't even blush when you tell a lie. It seems that you gradually get used to making up lies. Dustless just disdainfully curled his lips and immediately sneered, Very well, since you don't think it's like a sheep entering the tiger's mouth, I don't care. After the voice fell, Dustless glanced at Murasame Rain, winked at her and smirked, obviously hinting Murasame Rain to tease this proud woman. I understand. Murasame Rain's eyebrows stretched out, nodded gently with a smile and elegantly picked up the black notepad. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Irene. If you have any trouble in the future, just leave it to me. Irene smiled and glanced at Dustless and Murasame Rain. Her clear voice was very pleasant. However, in the next second she instantly felt bitter. She couldn't wait to slap herself and secretly scolded her mouth. Miss Irene, since you have said so, I will not be polite. There is no doubt that as an assistant of a PE teacher, you naturally need a strong physique. Now please go to the playground and run 100 laps with weights. You must finish it within an hour. Murasame Rain looked at Irene seriously, and there was no room for negotiation in her words. 100 laps. Are you kidding me? Run 100 laps in an hour? Can this be done by human beings? One lap is almost 500 meters, 100 laps is 50,000 meters, which is 50 kilometers, and it's completed within an hour. You are not deliberately teasing me, are you? Irene's watery eyes stared at Dustless, and her anger almost burned her reason. This guy was obviously deliberately teasing her. Run 50 kilometers in an hour? What a joke. Deliberately teasing you? I'm not that kind of mean person. It's completely nonsense. As an assistant of a PE teacher, you don't have a strong physique. How can you be a role model for students? You have to pay attention to your identity. Dustless said slowly, looking at Irene with a smirk, and his cheeks were full of teasing expressions. Obviously, Dustless deliberately teased Irene. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 21-23. Ailian was so angry that she clenched her teeth. She understood that Wuxian was purposely punishing her and using this as a pretext to make a fuss. He was deliberately retaliating against her. However, the sad thing was that Ailian didn't have any reason to refute Wuxian. She could only swallow her anger. You win. Using the most resentful eyes in her life, she glared at Dustless a few times before leaving. It seemed that she was really going for a run. Isn't it inappropriate to deliberately set her up like this? Who knows, maybe she'll secretly set a trap for you when you're trying to catch the elves. That's not worth it. Although Murasame Rain was also somewhat gloating, she felt that it was too much. After all, it was an exaggeration of 50 kilometers in an hour. It would be a miracle if he could complete it. Gulp. Dustless smiled and took a big sip of herbal tea. Looking through the window at the blonde girl on the field, he said disapprovingly, Rain, she came to monitor me. Do I need to be nice to this kind of person? If I didn't guess wrong, Irene's purpose is to collect my data, then find an opportunity to hurt me and then use me for experiments. When the time is right, she won't mind dissecting me into 8 pieces. Speaking of this, Dustless's eyes were cold. With a bang, he directly crushed the teacup in his hand, and the ground was full of glass fragments. Huff huff huff. On the field, Aileen was panting and sweating profusely. Her bright golden hair was covered with sparkling and translucent beads of sweat. She was the only one running on the field. Her face was also incomparably pale, causing others to feel pity for her. However, from the beginning to the end, Wuxian was like a piece of iron. His cold eyes condensed a cold light without the slightest bit of humanity. Not to mention having protective feelings for the fairer sex, there was not even a trace of pity ripple. To cherish a beautiful woman, one had to look at the other party. Who would cherish a beautiful woman who had deliberately approached you, wanted to collect your data, and was about to be dissected by you in the end? It was already good that Dustless didn't destroy the beauty. Speaking of which, that homicidal maniac Tokisaki Kurumi seems to have disappeared. Dustless's eyes flickered as he looked over. His clear eyes took in the entire Lichen High School. Shido Itsuka, Tabichi Origami Yato Toka, and the others were all clearly visible. Only Toshiaki Kurumi was missing. What? Do you miss her? Murasame Rain stared at Dustless with interest. Her eyes were shining, and it felt particularly strange with the thick black smoke. Anyone could see what she meant. Miss her? She's more like me. That little girl had always wanted to borrow my power to go back in time and kill the primordial elf. She had always regarded me as her exclusive property and always paid attention to me. She suddenly didn't come to school. I was just very curious. In the past, I was always surrounded by Izaki Kurumi's traces. Now that I've given up on him, it feels weird. Dustless spoke frankly as he looked around, but he still couldn't find any trace of Tokisaki Kurumi. I don't know the specific reason. Our people tried to monitor her, but they were killed and even their bodies were not found. Murasame Rain shook her head and sighed. Among all the elves, Nightmare is the most difficult to deal with. The number of humans she killed is dozens of times more than other elves. Enough. Without waiting for Murasame Rain to continue, Dustless interrupted her and said with a frown, Toshiaki Kurumi has confronted me many times. I know her quite well. In fact, she's not as bad as you think. There's no need to find someone to monitor her. Those who were killed by Toshiaki Kurumi only meant that they deserved to be killed. Deserved to be killed? Hearing Dustless's words, Murasame Rain couldn't help but shiver. Although this cold tone didn't have any killing intent, it made her feel as if she had fallen into an ice cave. Looking carefully at Dustless's deep black eyes, Murasame Rain clearly saw a kind of indifference that she had never seen before. He was full of indifference to everything in the world. He could destroy it with a wave of his hand, and he didn't care about the lives of humans as if they were worthless. What a cold guy. Although Dustless is not an elf, he is definitely more brutal and terrifying than the elves. I hope that no one will anger Dustless in the future. Murasame Rain took a deep breath. Dustless's indifferent tone just now made her shiver all over. In the blink of an eye, half an hour had passed. Once again the sound of high heels could be heard in the corridor. However, it was different from before. It stopped after a few sounds. Repeating this process over and over again, it seemed to be very tiring. Boom. The office door was smashed open by a punch. Dustless raised his eyes and looked straight at the door. The person who came was Irene, who was half dead from exhaustion. You really have no manners. Didn't your family say that you have to knock on the door before entering? You don't even know the basic etiquette. How can I rest assured to let you be my assistant? Dustless chuckled and stared at Irene, who had a dark face. He was silent for a moment. The sudden words almost made her unable to hold back her anger and fight with Dustless. Irene, in fact, you don't have to run 100 laps. You just need to ask for leave at that time. After all, I am a very compassionate boss. As my assistant, Rain has never suffered so much. Why didn't you say that before? Now that I have finished running, it's your turn to talk nonsense. Hearing this, Irene was so angry that smoke was coming out of her 7 orifices. She shouted loudly, "Could it be that your mouth was sewn up by needle and thread before? You even forgot this kind of thing. How dare you say that you are compassionate to your subordinates? Shameless. You are an evil person. It's really hard to be a good person." Dustless sighed sadly, then smiled and said, "Since you think that I am not a good boss, then I will show my true nature. Irene, please go out and run another 100 laps. Don't ask me why. Since you said that I am an evil person, I will take it with a clear conscience. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 evaluation votes plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates." Chapter 21-24. Ai Lian was so angry that her head felt stuffy. Her slender white jade finger trembled as she pointed at Wu Chen. Seeing this guy's sloppy manner with a cheap smile on his face, her pink face instantly turned red like a monkey's butt. Her pair of eyes that were enough to spurt out flames almost melted Wu Chen. "Are you purposely going against me? Don't think that I'm easy to bully. Do you believe that I can kick you out of this school with just a flick of my finger?" Ai Lian could not bear it any longer. Looking at Dustless's stinky face, her innermost being churned, almost throwing up. "This bastard is too hateful. He bullied me time and time again. Not to mention a living person, even a clay bodhisattva would be angered by Dustless. Hee hee, you want me to get out?" Dustless laughed. He blinked his deep eyes and said innocently, "You want me to get out? I can't ask for anything more. If you have the guts, ask the principal to fire me right now." Dustless put his feet on the table and leaned his head on the soft cushion. He even whistled, looking like a dead pig that wasn't afraid of boiling water. "Don't get carried away." Irene pointed at Dustless and trembled with anger. She wanted to kick Dustless out of this school. She also wanted to, but the higher-ups would not agree to such a doting method. Her task was to monitor Wu Chen and collect the data of this abominable brat. If Wu Chen left, how could she collect the data? Therefore Irene was just casually saying it to scare Dustless. She thought that threatening Dustless would scare him, but who would have thought that this guy would retreat in order to advance? His expression made Irene so angry that she wanted to bite Dustless to death. "You have guts. Just wait and see." Irene glared at Dustless and left. Being in the same space as this guy, she felt that she would lose 10 years of her life. Hey Irene, don't run. Go and clean the toilet bowl in the girls' room. Also, remember to clean the entire school building. And lastly, despicable bastard, he must have done it on purpose definitely. Does the PE teacher's assistant need to clean the ladies' room? You're deliberately causing trouble for me. Dustless's series of orders came from behind. Hearing this, Irene almost vomited blood. Who does this bastard think I am? Even a full-time nanny wouldn't need to take care of the school building. What a bastard. You better not fall into my hands. Irene turned around and glanced at Dustless's ugly face, then angrily ran away. You've completely infuriated her like this. It's inevitable that you'll cause some unnecessary trouble. Seeing that Irene had run away, Murasame Rain sighed with melancholy. Once the opportunity was seized, the other party would definitely retaliate fiercely. So what? Even if I infuriated her, would she eat me? Dustless disapproved of this and sneered, playing with her is an honor for this little girl. If she doesn't know when to stop, then don't blame me for being ruthless. By the way, I have something to do, so I'll be leaving first. Suddenly remembering something, Murasame Rain smiled and stared at Dustless. What's the matter? Dustless looked at Murasame Rain strangely and wondered, is it the problem of the elves? The power of Toka and Kodari has been sealed by me. Tokisaki Kurumi is missing. The 4 elves are so well behaved and won't cause trouble. Are there other elves? Speaking of this, Dustless instinctively thought of the 2 sisters Baba Yaga and Baba Yaga. It was strange to think about it. After the 2 sisters disappeared, they seemed to have disappeared from the world. There was nowhere to find them, including the members of AST, who couldn't find the traces of the 2. It was as if they had never appeared. The next class seems to be the PE class. It's really troublesome. I wanted to leave it to you, but now you leave early. Don't you want me to play with those kids again? Looking at the class schedule, Dustless complained quite unhappily. Murasame Rain's eyes turned gently and smiled. Leave the next PE class to me. I'll just go out for about 10 minutes. I'll come back when the time is up. You can rest here temporarily. Are you sure? Dustless showed a rare smile. I asked you to go to class for me before. You didn't compromise. Why did you suddenly change this time? Could it be that there's some unspeakable secret? No, absolutely not. Murasame Rain immediately refuted Dustless and said, if you don't want to, then you go to the next PE class. I'll stay in the office to rest. You go. Who has time to accompany those kids to do radio gymnastics? It's funny. Dustless snorted and lay on the sofa comfortably. He waved his hand and said, just do as you said. You go. Remember to come back in 10 minutes. After today I will resign. I have no patience for this job. It's too boring. Murasame Rain didn't say much. She just nodded and immediately left quietly. Time passed by minute and 10 minutes passed in the blink of an eye. Knock, knock, knock. The sound of knocking on the door suddenly sounded. Dustless, who was sleeping comfortably, opened his eyes and couldn't help but frown. Is it Rain? She said before that she would take my place in this PE class. Why did she suddenly come back? After a deep stretch, Dustless yawned and went to open the door. He was really sleepy. Creak. Unexpectedly, as soon as the door was opened, 2 beautiful figures rushed into his eyes. The appearance and dressing of these 2 people were almost the same. Their figures were very hot and they were even wearing cute maid outfits. Their rosy cheeks were full of affection as they stared at Dustless. Their pink and tender faces were exceptionally perfect. 2 shy little dimples were clearly visible, making people who saw them couldn't help but want to kiss them personally. You're Pachiwa Yijia and Pachiwa Xian? Dustless stupidly said the names of the 2 girls. Suddenly, the strange smile of Murasame Rain appeared in his mind. After the corner of his mouth twitched, he suddenly cursed, damn Rain, no wonder she took the initiative to teach those naughty kids for me. It turned out to help the 2 sisters find time to capture me. Hateful. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 21-25. The 2 of you. No wonder I couldn't find any traces of you. So Lingyin hid you. Also, what kind of nonsense did she teach you? Why are you wearing maid outfits? Dustless stared straight at the 2 girls. At this moment their outfits were extremely revealing. Because of the white maid outfits, their skin was almost transparent, and their graceful bodies were completely exposed to Dustless. Cough, cough, cough. Even though Dustless was an old monster who had lived for hundreds of years, he was also quite embarrassed at this moment. He looked at the clear eyes of the 2 sisters, which were as pure and flawless as snow. It was obvious that they didn't know anything and were extremely simple-minded. Don't even think about running away this time. I will definitely make you infatuated with me. Bachiwu Yijia hugged Dustless's right arm and directly stuffed Dustless's right arm into the cleavage in front of her. The endless aftertaste of the touch immediately surged into his heart. Dustless's heart, which had been calm for many years, rippled, and a nameless fire burned in his heart. Objection. Bachiwu Xishuan did the same and also pulled Dustless's cheating arm over and buried it deep in her cleavage. She looked at Bachiwu Yijia provocatively. Your rough skin will only make Dustless more uncomfortable. What did you say? Xishuan, do you believe that I won't tear your mouth apart? Bachiwu Yijia was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. He instantly stood up and glared at Bachiwu Xishuan, looking like he was about to start a fight. This is the truth. Bachiwu Xishuan was not afraid at all. She looked into Bachiwu Yijia's eyes without any fear. She pointed at Dustless and announced, Teacher said that men like big breasts. You obviously have no advantage in this aspect. Admit defeat, Yijia. If your breasts are big. What a joke, Xishuan. Hearing this, Xianxia sneered. Then, like an arrogant queen, she crossed her arms in front of her and squeezed the heavy meatball in front of her. She looked at Xianxia's cleavage with disdain. Your cleavage is too small. It can't even withstand a single blow. If you know what's good for you, leave quickly. Don't lose face if you lose. Objection. Zhou Xian said sarcastically, Yajuya is just, all of you stop. From now on, you are not allowed to speak without my permission. Dustless suddenly interrupted the quarrel between the two and asked with a headache, Who is the teacher you are talking about? Which damn teacher taught you all this? This kind of teacher is simply a beast in human clothing. Instead of teaching the students properly, he actually taught you how to seduce men. He's sick. Dustless opened his mouth. Just as he was about to continue speaking, a figure suddenly appeared in his mind. In the original work, it was Murasame Rain who taught the two sisters how to seduce men, tricking the two sisters to capture 5 River Shido. Who would have thought that it would become him? Don't tell me Lingyin taught you? Dustless asked uncertainly as he looked at the two of them. The two sisters looked at each other and nodded at the same time. As expected, it's this Fujoshi. Dustless shook his head and was not surprised. He first pulled the two sisters into the PE teacher's office and let them sit on the sofa. Then he slowly said, Actually, you can change the competition. Let me be infatuated with you, is a bit too much. Dustless had lived for hundreds of years. What kind of beauty had he not seen before? He might have met a beautiful woman that he liked, but he would not overdo it. He would never be infatuated with her. This consort has already competed against Zhou Xian in all sorts of special competitions. Even now there's still no clear victor. This challenge is the most challenging one. Xianxia looked at Dustless seriously. It was obvious that she wanted to continue with this competition. Brats will always be brats. You won't listen to adults' advice at all. Dustless shook his head again and was too lazy to persuade her. He looked up at the ceiling and said, Then I'm sorry to tell you that even if you wear maid outfits, you won't be able to make me infatuated with you. Your plans will all be ruined. No, this is only the first step. There's still a second step. Yakuza came over with a smile and lay on Dustless's body. Instantly, a fragrant aroma wafted out from Yakuza's body. Dustless was stunned. He stared at Xianxia and stared at her snow-white breasts. There was an envelope that looked like a letter in the middle. Curious, Dustless reached out and grabbed it. After looking at it carefully for a few seconds, Dustless asked in surprise, Seducing Night Majo's concert ticket? Where did you get this from? Master gave it to us. Xianxia looked at Dustless and was convinced. She also took out a similar ticket. This Murasame Rain really put in a lot of effort. In order for her 2 disciples to woo me, she even prepared Seducing Night Majo's concert ticket in advance. Looking at the ticket in his hand and glancing at the 2 girls' eager eyes, Dustless knew that he had to go this time even if he didn't want to. The weirdest thing was Seducing Night Majo's concert. As a transmigrator, Dustless understood that Seducing Night Majo was also an elf. Her identification name was Diva. She was a student in her normal life. Her real identity was a human who was endowed with elf power like Itsuka Kotori. She had an extremely male-hating personality and her favorability would drop below that of a cockroach just by talking to her. She was an elf who liked females very much. In other words, it was no different from a fool's dream to woo Night Majo or gain her favorability. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 21-26. Of course, Dustless could also imitate Itsuka Shido, disguise himself as a woman and try to seduce Meijio. Okay, I promise you two that I'll accompany you to see Meijio's concert in 3 days. Dustless couldn't bear to refuse when faced with Yejuya and Zhou Xian's expectant eyes. He had no choice but to agree to go to the concert in 3 days. At least you know what's good for you. It's rare for you to be so obedient. I'll give you a reward. Yejuya looked at Dustless with a smile. She stared at his white and tender face and blushed. But when she recalled Murasame Rain's advice, she mustered up her courage and still took the initiative to approach him. What do you want? Dustless looked at Yejuya strangely. He didn't know what this guy was doing. Zhou Xian wants it too. At the same time, Zhou Xian's face also leaned over. Her eyes stared at Dustless like a wolf or a tiger, as if she was hesitating where to start. These two guys. Seeing this, Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Ripples appeared on both sides of his eyes. He was speechless to find that he was surrounded by the small lips of the two girls on both sides. Moi. Taking advantage of Dustless's hesitation, Yejuya and Zhou Xian attacked with great tacit understanding. The two of them left a pink lip print on Dustless's left and right cheeks. You. Wu Chen's eyes widened when he sensed the strange sensation on his cheek. He sighed when he saw the two girls' delicate faces. Forget it, forget it. It's fine that you took advantage of me. I'll put this on Ling Yin's head. You're the one who's benefiting. Yejuya punched Dustless and said angrily, You're the one who took advantage of us, not the other way around. How many handsome guys want to go to the concert with me? I'm not interested. Is that so? Then I'm really surprised to be invited by the two of you. Dustless chuckled. His tone was very flat. In fact, let alone watching the concert, he didn't know how many beauties were circling around him. It was just that Dustless didn't care. After all, there were too many beauties in the world. He couldn't fall in love with every one of them. Moreover, a mere concert was nothing. As long as Dustless called, there would definitely be countless beauties accompanying him to watch the concert. This was the benefit of being powerful. Ding ding ding. In the blink of an eye, it was noon. At the same time, it was also the time for Lichon High School to be dismissed. You haven't gone back yet? Walking into the PE teacher's office, the first thing that came into view was Dustless lying comfortably on the sofa. His eyes were closed as if he was taking a nap. Of course, I'm still missing you, the main character. Dustless suddenly opened his eyes and stared at the figure of Murasame Rain. His palm suddenly grabbed and a large scale of gravity broke out in an instant. Boom. Caught off guard, Murasame Rain lost the control of her body. The whole person was like a kite with a broken string, powerlessly falling into Dustless's arms. What do you want to do? Let me go, here is the school. Murasame Rain stared at the handsome face close at hand. After a few seconds, she immediately struggled violently. However, her strength was too small and she couldn't break free at all. You did something wrong and still ask me what I did? Are you still pretending to be stupid now? Dustless stared at Murasame Rain jokingly, with a mischievous expression on his face. It seems that if I don't give you some punishment, you won't confess. After the voice fell, Dustless's hands reached into Murasame Rain's clothes. Don't mess around, here is the school. Murasame Rain was like a frightened little white rabbit, screaming loudly quickly. Hey, you can't mess around at school, but can you mess around at home? Touching Murasame Rain's chin, Dustless laughed and joked. Your two apprentices are very capable. They even dare to regard me as prey. Their ambition is not small. You know it all? Hearing this, Murasame Rain's pretty face was slightly red, and she understood what Dustless said. The two little girls' minds are as pure as snow. I just asked them a little bit and then I knew who the behind-the-scenes person is. Dustless glanced at Murasame Rain disdainfully, and his expression rarely showed a trace of emotion. He smiled and said, But they succeeded and I have promised to go to the concert. Really? Murasame Rain was greatly surprised, and the thick dark circles under her eyes disappeared in an instant. She was in high spirits and looked energetic. For a long time, in the impression of most people, Dustless was an extremely cold type. Although he usually talked and laughed, his essence was cold. Now that her 2 apprentices had successfully conquered Dustless, Murasame Rain's heart inevitably felt a little proud. Yes, I promised them. The 2 children are very simple. Although they are elves, they are no different from human children. Perhaps it is the remaining kindness that causes trouble. I can't bear to refuse them, so I agreed. Dustless said lightly. So, I taught them well and took advantage of your kindness? Murasame Rain smiled slightly and sounded very satisfied. Maybe anyway, I promised them. In short, you succeeded, Rain. Dustless nodded slightly and immediately changed his expression. He smiled and said, although I can't bully the 2 pure little girls, but, speaking of this, Dustless's eyes burst out a burst of cold light, and Murasame Rain felt uncomfortable and had a feeling of imminent disaster. But what? Murasame Rain asked nervously. It's very simple. Dustless suddenly hugged Murasame Rain, and immediately pressed her on the table with great strength, lifting the black skirt. I can't bear to retaliate against your 2 apprentices. After all, they are too simple, but as their teacher I can retaliate against you. I will let you understand the consequences of using me. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates.